Christina, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank
So, do
you.
you want to start? I'm excited to talk about this with you because
Mhm.
yoga was a huge phase of my life that
Yeah.
I just really never get to talk about because it was like a
Yeah.
really hardcore few years. But I
Yes.
don't talk about it very often. But I want to start with you said like you have had a lot of time in the yoga world. You said that you've had some really culty type of yoga things. Do you want to start with the really culty one, or where it makes most sense for your story to begin?
Well, that is sort of the beginning anyway,
Okay.
but basically like I've been actually kind of thinking about what your recent shares and how I grew up in youth group in the church and then
Huh.
like a lot of people hit 18, never set foot in a church ever again.
Yeah.
And so, like, in my early 20s, that kind of creates this, like, little vacuum, little void, I feel like. And so, whether you know it or not, like, I found yoga and, like, what is yoga? But, you know, you have rituals, you have the Yoga Sutras, you have meditation, which is what is that? It's like almost a form of prayer in some ways. So, it's interesting because I've been kind of putting the pieces together like that. But um, when I first started yoga, I'd always done yoga as a teenager, but started at a big studio um, when I was probably 20, 19 or 20. And I mean, it's like sexy church. It's just like all these beautiful people. You know what I mean? Like you're all together.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's sexy church. You're flowing together. You're breathing together. This was hot
You're
yoga.
wearing
So
very
it's
little
like,
clothing.
yes, yes, yes. Did you do hot yoga or were you,
I did
what,
not do
what was
hot
your,
yoga, but and I think we can just say for everyone, I think we're aware that this is
yeah.
not how yoga originated to be. Like
No, no, no.
this was not
Sorry. Yeah,
the
no, no, no.
initial intention, but this is how we do it
Yeah.
in the West. So we can just be honest about that.
Yes. Yes. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to use the names of these
Go ahead.
yoga
Yeah.
teachers and trainings because I don't give a shit. But I also don't know anything about like podcasts and what you're allowed to say and whatnot. But really, all this stuff is true. It's
I
just my
think that
opinions on it,
I'm pretty
just
sure
so you know.
you're just liable for whatever you say. So
Cool.
you go
Perfect.
for it.
Come at me. Come at me. Perfect. Um, yeah. So I started this big yoga studio and
You started a studio.
no, no, sorry. I
Oh,
started practicing at a big
okay,
yoga
okay.
studio. Sorry. No, 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 I could never.
All right.
But the teachers there, they had all done this one kind of training, and I was starting to get into it like overall. So I had signed up for a 200-hour training separately and also signed up for this 2-week training. I don't know if you've heard of it. Baptiste yoga.
I have heard
Eh,
of Baptiste yoga.
you
I
did
haven't done
okay.
it.
How did you do your training? Where'd you do your training?
I did my training, my initial training was like a typical 200-hour vinyasa
Hmm.
training in Pennsylvania at a studio. And then I
Oh,
did
nice.
another like further yin training, but that was my
Yeah.
main. Yeah.
Were you like in Philly or was it like smaller studio?
No, it was smaller studio in Northeast
Okay.
Pennsylvania where I grew up. Hmm.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay. Yeah. Actually, where I lived in Pennsylvania, there was
Oh
like a
yeah, you
legit,
grew up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't grow up there. I lived there for 3 years,
Right.
4 years. Yeah. I lived near Reading, but there was a legit like yoga commune there, and I always wanted to go. I never ended up going, but I wanted to go and see it. But it was like, it was out there. It was like a live it. You know, they use all those words that are actually cult words, but they change it like residency
Yeah.
program, and you're like, but anyway, I never went. But um, went to this big studio, saw all these very happy, shiny people that I thought were pretty good teachers at the time, but I think they were probably just like kind of regurgitating things. And I'm sort of like a jump into things. I don't really like think about it too much. I was like, take my money, let's go. So um, I was in the middle of my 200-hour training. That's important because I wasn't really like,
Wait, why did you
I was,
decide to do the training? Did you practice for a while before doing the training, or how did that happen for you?
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, like maybe a year or something. But like I said, I'm kind of like a
Yeah.
dive in overnight kind of person. And I was just like, this is great. I'm going to do it. I did. I think I practiced for a while, like maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years before I did it.
Huh.
So, in the course of this 200-hour training, I'm really grateful for that training in Seattle because it was just like a really positive experience. Whereas this was like kind of a nuts experience. But so, my boyfriend at the time and I went to Hawaii. He was like fucked off over in Hawaii having the time of his fucking life and dropped me off. And this place, this for this Baptiste training, it is isolated. Like it is out there. It is on the big island in Hawaii. Not the very southern tip, but close. It's at a place called Kalani. And I mean, thousands of people have gone there. This is not a secret or anything. There's no cell service. First of all, this is like 2010 or something. So, I mean, like I had a Palm Trio, I'm pretty sure anyway. Like, no cell service. You are many, many miles. You can't hop over to like the Holiday Inn Express in Maui. Like, you're out there, and most people take a shuttle from the airport and get dropped off. Like, you can't leave, and that's part of it. Like, whether that's by design or not, that's part of it. Like, you can't just easily leave. Of course, you could get out, but I mean, you are there. You're kind of stuck there. So you're very isolated, and it's definitely like something you feel. You're like, yeah, I can't just like leave easily, you know? And another thing about this training from the beginning, and this is so culty, is like they never tell you what's going on. You don't get a schedule, you don't have any idea when you're getting a meal, when you're going to bed. There's absolutely no like anything the whole week. It's just moment by moment. Somebody will tell you where to go. And that is very disorienting. And in addition to that, they have you on this crazy strict diet. It's like gluten free, low sugar, vegan, obviously, um, no caffeine. And you're practicing a lot. Like you're practicing a lot of yoga. I was fucking starving. And they had, this was 2010, so there wasn't good gluten-free food. It was like, they had this bread that like tasted like sand. And me and my friend would like make these horrible peanut butter and jelly sandwiches out of sand bread and like shove them in our yoga pants because we were so fucking hungry. Like you just never knew when you're going to be able to eat, when you're going to be able to do go to sleep or anything. And so again, another thing that sort of physically disorients you, you're also really tired because you're up at the same time every day, no matter how late they keep you up the night before.
Wow. So you
Um,
don't know how long you're gonna end up being up at night, but you still have to get
mm-mm,
up early.
mm-hmm. Yes, yes. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. So this is a training. I should go back and say this is Baron Baptiste. He is one of those guys who just decided to slap his name on a couple yoga poses and say, this one's mine, copyright it. And it's Sun A, Sun B, standing poses, balance poses, hip openers, and Shavasana. Like
Yeah, it's
that's not
nothing
yours.
special.
You did not do that, Baron Baptiste. Like you did not make that up. But he would say he did.
Uh-huh. Was
So
this training with him directly?
yes. So he had like
Is he still alive?
yes. Oh
Okay.
yes, very much alive. So he's definitely been outed as a cult like in the last maybe 5 years. And a lot of the like top people um have come out and spoken out. And I think he's trying to kind of like rebuild his reputation right now because I've seen him kind of come out on a couple podcasts and try
Have
to
they
like
accused him of
sweep that under the
assault or
rug.
anything?
There have been accusations of inappropriate relationships. Um, I don't think assault, but I think things where the other people in the organization were like, hey, that's not okay. That's a power dynamic problem. Like, he's in charge of you. That's not right. I think the bigger problem with Baron Baptiste is the financial I would say abuse because these trainings are not cheap. I think this 10-day was like $3,000 and that's
Yeah.
2010 though. So you have to kind of adjust. And then there's a level one, two, three, art of assisting. There's something called I think that's like a leadership program. And then there was multiple other programs and people were in deep in these things. I don't know why. It was like almost like the Nexium thing where it was like, oh, you have another
There's like
program for self
layer after
development.
layer. Yeah.
Yes. And it never stops because he's probably got like yacht payments or I don't know, like a golf membership he has to pay. Like, I don't know what, where he gets this stuff. But I think that was like, and also just like years of people's time they put into this type of yoga. So in the mornings,
Why did
yeah,
you do that kind? Like
because it
what
was
drew
the
you to
first
Baptiste?
studio I went to.
Ah,
It was the first studio I ever went to, and everybody had gone to this Baptiste training. And so
okay.
I signed up just sort of impulsively, started my life impulsively. And then I did the 200-hour and then several trainings afterwards. But I had signed up for it and I didn't really want to go. But my boyfriend at the time was like, hey, let's go to Hawaii. It'll be great. It'll be beach. It'll be fun. Like,
Okay.
so um, in the first day, this is like so embarrassing to me, but also I don't know if I would do anything different. So the first day, they actually have everybody go around the room. This is probably 150 people with a microphone and pledge to be and make a pledge to the training, like on the microphone, right? So don't come for me. I don't remember the whole thing. I can't find it on the internet, but it was something like I commit to being a yes, letting the teachers do their work, being open and giving up what I need to. But it was like it was a lot more intense than that. I can't even make up anything as intense.
Yeah.
So like you're going around, and this is an hours long practice. This is hours long because it's so many people and it's pretty long. And this is when you first get your taste of what the inquiry is. An inquiry, I feel like, is not even an original phrase. I feel like lots of different organizations use that word. So I only remember one woman, there probably was more, but I only remember one woman who was like, I don't want to publicly pledge myself. I just got here. I think maybe I'll just sit this one out.
How about that?
And that's when you enter inquiry. And
Like she had to do inquiry?
basically, she was getting inquirized. So
Okay.
Baron will just pick and pick and pick and dig and dig and dig until he finds something he can exploit. And this is in front of 150 people.
Mhm.
Like, this is extremely uncomfortable and inappropriate because he's just some guy and he's digging and digging and digging. And you should just be able to say, I don't want to say this and continue a yoga training. But I think that particular inquiry went on probably a little over an hour where he's like, why don't you want to be a yes? Why do you have problems with commitment? Why do you feel like you're not worthy of commitment? Things like that. Really humiliating things until she said it, until she said the pledge. And then everybody's like, yeah, it's like, it's the most bizarre thing. Like and Georgia, I'm sorry, but I read the situation, okay? I read the situation and I thought I am not going to be one of the ones on that mic getting picked on by Baron. So I just grabbed that mic and I just dissociated and I just said the pledge. I don't know. I like to think that I would have been a stronger person who was like, no, I'm not saying it, but at the time, I saw it was crazy and I just did it anyway.
So this is
I
interesting
don't know.
because for me, at that age especially, but also up until really my cult experience, I had such a like I almost felt special that I was willing to say the pledge type of thing. Like say yes, to be a full
Yeah.
yes. Because it felt like, why are
Yeah.
you all so afraid? Why are you all so skeptical? I'm not that way. I'm
Yeah.
so open. I'm so receptive.
Yeah.
Like, watch me be unafraid to say it because I'm totally just unafraid of anything like that. And so
Yeah.
there can be that too, right? Where you feel like
Yeah.
superior if you're the type of person that will do it and not have boundaries. That was really what it was. I didn't have a good sense of boundaries or why I would need to have boundaries.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I was immediately a yes to anything like that. kind of through my
Hmm.
whole life until until it all crashed.
Yeah, I think I definitely have been that way before, like been a seeker and just open and everything. But for me, I was like a little bit of a loner as a high schooler. So I read a lot of like dystopian novels about terrible leadership. So I've always had like paranoia
Huh.
about leaders. And that's why this particular training did not get me really. Like I was able to kind of see it from the outside. Because I don't know, I read a lot of like 1984, Animal Farm, Brave New World, and I was like, I'm skeptical of leadership. Not that I'm smarter than anyone, just paranoid probably. And that's why this particular training didn't get me. But I definitely have blind spots for people in my mind who I'm like, but that's not a leader who's abusing power. That's a good person. You know,
Well,
everybody's
here's
got,
the thing
yeah.
too that I'll say with what you've said is like, and I think about this a lot because there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of culty type tactics that
Mm-hmm.
can be used also in a good way, but also in a bad, destructive, culty way. So like you talked about sorry, I just got a notification. I was like, what does that mean?
No,
Um what was I saying? The
I I talked about pledge, the isolation, the
Oh, because I would
mhm,
so there are culty tactics that can be used for good and bad things. So some of the things
yeah.
you've said, like when I held my retreat and I held it here, I purposefully did not give them a schedule. And
Hmm.
it was done on purpose to create this sense of surprise and like magic
Hmm.
and mystery because it was like you never know what
Hmm.
we're going to be doing next.
Hmm.
But at the same time, so like you can kind of see how that tactic could be used if someone's coming with integrity.
Yeah.
You can hold it in a way that it does actually feel magical and exciting. And then you can
Hmm.
also hold it in a way where it's about control and about creating that nervous system instability. And I think it also depends, and the practitioner would have to be aware of what kind of things you're leading people into. Because if you're doing, and we weren't doing at my retreat, like deep trauma type of
Hmm.
like bringing up trauma types of things. But if you were, you'd want to create more structure like that to give people a sense of safety. But there's I just want to make it clear for anyone listening that
Hmm.
there's not, maybe there are certain things, but for most aspects of cult, it's not the aspect itself that's like, oh, this is 100% all the time bad.
Yes.
Some things, like branding,
Yes.
maybe, but for most things, it's like, it's not always bad, even inquiry type of stuff, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes that can be done in a way where it's in front of everyone, it's embarrassing, the teacher will go deep in until they get the answer that they want.
Hmm.
Um, or it can also be done in a way where it can be really good for someone to get their ego sort of get
Hmm.
deeper into the person than their ego protection mechanisms. But I've seen
Hmm.
that also where I've been at events where there's been hundreds of people in the audience and they bring someone up on stage and they do this like deep questioning and intense thing and the person's crying and everyone's celebrating their
Yeah.
trauma and it's like, and I remember sitting there feeling really
Yeah.
uncomfortable like this doesn't
Yeah.
feel good, like what's going to happen to this person tomorrow, this doesn't feel like it's going well.
And there's also like um expectations of things like even a very strict diet is maybe not even a bad thing for some people. Maybe people thrive on a keto or whatever, things like that. You know,
Yeah,
that's not even bad. But
not
it's also
necessarily.
like this is like a this is a yoga teacher training. They broke down what the hours were going to be of everything, and like
No, you have to
absolutely
feed people.
zero of it. What's that?
You have to feed people when you're doing that type.
I would think
I've done things like that too, where they don't feed you, like they make you do a bunch of hours of yoga before you even eat
yes,
breakfast. And I'm like, I
yes,
can't thrive that way. So I would steal a banana or something so at least I could.
yeah, yeah.
But you know what
I
I
know.
think also is
I'm
the
like,
problem? Like, I think it's more of a problem. And it depends, I guess. Maybe if something's really traditional and you traditionally follow this way of
hmm.
eating, I guess that could be fine. But I think about I had a 2-week shamanic training one time, and the food
Mm-hmm.
was all vegetarian, maybe even
Mm-hmm.
vegan. And by halfway through, I was dying for meat. And this you we were allowed to leave. And so it wasn't like you're not allowed to eat meat. It was just we're not feeding that here at this retreat center. And so one of the guys, I will never forget it. He went out and he came back with like a lunch, like a deli pack of roast beef slices, and they were all like bloody
Just
and red. And he came into lunch, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And he was like, "Do you
you're like,
want some?"
what
And I
was
was
your name?
like, "Yes, please." And he gave me like 3 like bloody pieces of meat, and I was like, "Thank you."
You're like, take my money. It's me a
I
piece
didn't
of
even
roast
pay him.
beef.
He just gave it to me, and I was like, "You are a hero." So,
Yeah,
but they
yeah,
weren't like, "You're bad, you can't
yeah,
do that," you know?
yeah.
So there's
Yeah, I
nuance.
did two 10-day silent meditation retreats, the Vipassana. I don't know if you've heard of that before,
Yeah.
but
I've
it's
never done it, but I've
they
heard.
yeah, they do like no, they don't do like a proper dinner. They do like tea and fruit if it's your first retreat, and then just tea if it's following. But they tell you that. You know that. And you
You're
can eat if you
prepared.
want to. Like they're like, "Oh, this is what we recommend just because you're meditating all day and you probably don't want to feel heavy. But if you're hungry, then fucking eat. If you're
Yeah.
diabetic, fucking eat, you know?" Like so it's definitely with this training it's like unless you knew someone and they were very honest with you about what the training had been like, you thought maybe you'd be learning to teach yoga poses. Maybe that's what you thought because it's a yoga training. Who knows? But maybe that's what you thought, like I thought. So in the morning, it was kind of nice because some of these things, like I said, are kind of nice. Like there's this huge group of people. You go to this sort of like yoga bubble that they've constructed so they can keep it warm, maybe like 85, 90 degrees. And in the morning, the first thing you do is you just like say hi to everyone. And for like 20 minutes, you just go around like, hug, good morning. How are you doing? How are you doing? And I remember actually really liking that. I like really missing that after I left. Like that was the one thing where I was like, man, that was really nice in the morning. How we just went around and hugged. It was like a little love bombing moment where you just infuse some endorphins into the day, you know?
Hmm.
And so that was really nice. I did miss that. That was I feel like part of the way they keep you like a little more like it's like the fellowship aspect almost like in church. It's a fellowship. You know, it's nice. Um and then in the mornings they would basically they would have someone read, just a random person, volunteer, read something out of Barron's book. Almost like a scripture reading, you could say, you know, in a church, almost like that, you know? So they would like do the thing where you open the book to the random page and then you read something. And then the person would say something about how it relates to their life. And then inquiry begins. And Barron starts digging and digging until the person cries. I'm not joking. It was like, you weren't getting off that mic until you cried. So you might as well just fucking cry. Because we're trying to eat breakfast here. Like, we're trying to get through this part. But I know that sounds really insensitive, but it really was like, it was that intense. And now, being a medical professional now, uh, people were having panic attacks like
Yeah.
during these inquiries. People were having panic attacks in front of 150 people. And all throughout the day, we'd be doing these inquiry sessions. And like some people definitely have issues that are like, why do you think that about yourself? Oh, because of this happened. They're like, well, maybe you see it from this way. And
Yeah.
people feel so much better. But some people have been assaulted. Some people have been assaulted and worse.
Yeah.
Um, and they have real serious trauma. And renegade psychotherapy by some guy. I'm not saying you have to have a bunch of alphabet soup behind your name, a degree to help people, but it's also like you can't just do that. Like that's fucked up. It's really
There's
fucked
a
up
big
to
distinction I've
yes.
noticed between a practitioner doing inquiry type of stuff like that for their own
Mm-hmm.
ego
Mm-hmm.
versus for like in service to the person in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a really big difference, and I've seen it in both ways because I agree with you. Obviously, like I've had some of the best coaching of my life from people who
Hmm.
don't have any sort of degree, and I've had some of the
Hmm.
worst therapy of my life from people who have all these degrees and things. But there is a big distinction in the coaching in the more unregulated space, especially around there are a lot of people who will dig into somebody to get a reaction so that they feel powerful. And you can always do
Yes.
that with anyone because people have stuff. Everybody has stuff. And but it's, is this actually helping the person in front of me? Is a really,
Yeah.
really tricky line.
It was definitely more of like a break them down so they can build you back up type of
Yeah.
thing. And then you can be like, wow, this training changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
But it was almost watching it, it was almost like when you hear about the police interrogating someone who's actually
Yeah.
innocent, but they interrogate them for so long that they end up just confessing
Yes.
because they're just so like mentally exhausted. That's more along the lines.
Yeah.
And this wasn't like this wasn't it's not like he was reading the person and being like, I'm not sure what this person probably needs a gentler approach. Or this person needs maybe a little more tenderness and less like harshness. He wasn't doing that. It was just one size fits all, like really, really it was not, there's a difference. And this was like more along the lines of public humiliation
The
is
other
what
problem
from
is
what I
that
can tell.
narcissists are often very skilled at that because they can
Mm-hmm.
see, they're so used to manipulating that in people so deeply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so those inquiry sessions were all throughout the day. And then we would practice a lot. But he'd have these assistant teachers who I'm 100% sure were not being paid. They were probably paying to be there. And they would begin to teach. And then he'd be like, stop, stop, stop. Everybody stop. And then he'd go to the teacher and he'd inquiry her and be like, why are you hiding? It doesn't feel like you're being a yes right now. And the teacher would be like, I'm just fucking saying, like, inhale upward facing dog, exhale downward facing dog. Like, what the fuck do you want from me? Like, he's like, you're hiding. And this is like, I just remember, like, feeling so mad because he would look at some of these women with this look like, ugh. And it's like, that's just so, it just was reinforced to me over the course of the training how I was like, this is not a good man. Like, this is not a, this is not a good leader. This is not a good man. That's my take on it. I don't know, maybe other people feel a different way, but I'd say it was just kept being reinforced to me at least. And these people would just be so embarrassed, just bright red. They were probably great teachers, and the things he would say were just, it was like madness. Like this teacher, she's teaching normal fucking practice. She's like, awesome, everybody. And he's like, stop, stop, stop. What? And he's like, awe some? You think there's just some awe? It's full. We're full of awe. And then everybody had to say awful for the rest of the week.
What?
I was like, what are we doing right now? Like, this is insane. Like, you can't just manipulate the English language just to like see if you can. And everybody just went along with it. It was just like, boop, boop, swapping in, awful, awesome. That's how it is now. I was just like, it was wild. And he would teach occasionally, and it would only be for the purpose of like, we do the, and you do 30 minutes in frog pose. People are breaking down and crying. And I think also that feels like a lot of social pressure. So there's a lot of people crying, and then like one side of the room would start crying and then sort of like go over. Not that you can't get really emotional from hip openers. I'm sure that happens, but
I
30-minute
bawled my
frog
eyes out
pose.
in hip openers. But I also
Yeah. I
think
mean,
there
they can
is,
definitely,
yeah.
yeah. And do you do like 10 Urdhva wheel poses. And it was just like, even while you're practicing though, like even me, even though I like really did not respect or this man, it's you still feel the like magnetism. Like he was charismatic for sure. He was a charismatic person. And you do feel like you're like, oh, I want to do a good job.
Yeah.
I want to do,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. Um, so this would kind of go on and on. We do our sometimes a full practice, sometimes like 20 minutes if he wanted to really rip into this teacher who was teaching. Um, kind of all over the place throughout the day. And then another thing, which again, a thing that can be used as a good tool or a bad, is they would do like the letter writing. Like you write a letter to someone who you think has wronged you,
Hmm.
which I think could be useful um, in some cases. But it's interesting because all these things, I'm like, I don't know about like the wide net of 150 people. Like just everybody do it, and maybe it'll
Right.
stick for some people. Because so for me, I had this story like my mom had always been like, oh, I wanted to live and die in this old cute house they had, but when I was born, they had to move to the burbs. So in my head, my whole life, I'm like, oh, I'm unwanted. She wanted to be in this house, blah, blah, blah. One of those things. And so I wrote my letter, my angry letter. And then I just kind of like stuck it in my mental junk drawer for 13 years. And probably the last year of my mom's life, maybe the last 2 years, I'm talking to her about her career. And I'm like, why did you make this move? Like to step back from your career at this time? And she said, well, I wanted to be with my babies. Like I wanted to be with my kids, And it was like, in that moment, just having that little conversation, I mean, like, didn't even mean to, having those words with her, it was like, oh, wow, all that angry letter writing really didn't do it for me. But I know I am lucky that, like, I got to have that conversation because a lot of people don't get closure like that. But
It is an
it was
interesting.
funny because it makes you feel more isolated sometimes when you're like,
Yes.
push your parents away because they did this wrong thing to you. You know, it kind of creates more separation, I think.
I think that it often does. I think that's a big problem in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of this world of doing things
Mm-hmm.
in this way. I guess I'd call it like the new agey sort of
Mm-hmm.
world. But even I think our current therapy often um ends up
Mm.
separating people more and more and causing people more pain because it really affirms that they and validates them in their pain and their grief, and we go deeper and deeper and deeper into grief, and then
Mm-hmm.
we only tend to find more grief when we do that too much.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, it's a tricky one because people like we need to feel and we don't want to suppress things.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think it does often happen where, and we don't talk about this very often, that we remember things wrong sometimes.
Oh, I
Like,
bet.
and so
Oh,
what
yeah.
happens, I think, a lot in today's therapy and in today's like way of healing trauma and these things is we have memories come up. And who's to say? I mean, like, if you feel you had this memory as a child, that was the way you experienced it, you might have this healing to do around the fact that that was your narrative, right? But I think we
Yeah.
don't.
Like perceived pain is pain. So,
Correct.
yeah.
But we don't consider sometimes that our memories might be um inaccurate. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had that happen a couple of times where it's been like, well, I remember this specific thing and like this really hurt me this moment. And then one of my parents has been like, that
I
didn't
didn't.
happen that way at all. And it's like,
You're like,
okay.
hold on. I've been keeping this emotional Tamagotchi
It's
alive
been like a
for like
big
20
part of
years.
my, yeah, of my
Yes.
identity. And it's just
Yeah.
not
You're
how
like,
it happened. And
yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's not because, and again, there's, so that we have to be able to hold the openness to everything, I think, because there is
Yeah.
nuance in all of it where it's like, you may have had a parent that hurt you in a number of ways, and that may be very true, and they did do those things. And
Hmm.
there may have also been other experiences that you're carrying this narrative of where it didn't actually occur that way. And we
Hmm.
do, when we're young, we mistake things because we don't
Hmm.
have the capacity to critically think as deeply.
Hmm.
And so we see things in a certain way and we're like, this is how it happened.
Hmm.
And it's not always the case. So it is a fascinating
Yeah.
thing because it becomes so
And
real.
it's like there's such a spectrum of, things. Like the thing that I just shared, like, pretty small thing. There's people who are like, I'm a rapist or something, like, so there's just such a spectrum. And it's also, you know, if it is something like mine, like that, if I chose to, I'd be like, well, there's friction there. And I don't want friction. And I'm renewing my fucking life through Baptiste training. So I'm stepping away from my parents. Like, you could easily do
Yes,
that and be
we
like,
do that all the
this is
time.
a good boundary I'm making. And then you're isolated from your parents. And then you're drawn more towards, Baptiste or whatever training it is. And it should be said that in this training, I'd say 90% of the people, unless they were faking it very, very well, were like 100% in.
Yeah.
Unless they were faking it very, very well. And every single day they were signing people up for the next training and like,
Oh yeah.
here, use a credit
Upsell.
card and get this next. Yeah.
Upsell.
Every day,
That's
like
what
after the first day.
yes, they teach you to do that sometimes. Like that's a well-known marketing thing where they get you in a high emotional state and then they sell you into the next thing.
That makes so much sense. That makes so
And we
much
were always,
sense.
when I did my coaching training, we were specifically told to not do that because she was like, this is ethical. Like, she was
Like,
like,
it's fucked
do
up.
not. It
Yeah.
was like if you have a sales call with someone and you end the call with them sobbing, do not then be like, okay, so want to sign up for my $10,000 program? Instead, be like, why don't you take some time and
Yeah.
think about it and then come back because like you're in this heightened emotional state and it's just
It's
unethical
like
to
the
sell
equivalent, like, turn the iPad around. It's gonna ask you a couple questions.
it.
Like, you know. Um, yeah. And so the thing that I did write down, because I just think it's funny, is that, like, of course, like Nexium, like all these other things, it has all these confusing tenets and pillars and like so many things that nobody could ever keep track of. And the ones that they went with, they kick shit off strong here with always be a yes. That's the first one, which really pigeonholes you into never being able to say no to anything. It's like, you know, always
You
be a
know what?
yes.
The thing is about that, it's a spin-off on an actual spiritual teaching, I believe, which is
Yes,
like the
yes,
the true being accepting of life, which is actually
yes.
held throughout Christianity. It's held throughout different
Mm-hmm.
Eastern spiritual teachings. There's a very similar uh, spiritual truth, they say, of this being an acceptance of life, and you could say being a yes to life. But
Yeah,
then they take it like that and it's abused by
yes.
people.
And the he like I have matched up. They say that this is based on the yamas and niyamas in the Yoga Sutras in
Hmm.
the eight limbs, but it's very loosely based. It's very, really just like it's based on it for people who are not going to look into it, basically.
Correct. I've never heard
Yeah.
this teaching in this way from anybody who's been a truly, even a deeply spiritual person. Someone who's like really embodied and grounded has never portrayed it in this way. They're never
No.
like, you need to
No.
absolutely 100% of the time be a yes,
Yeah.
when they don't sort of use it against you.
Hmm. And the second one, give up what you must, which basically just
That's the whole thing.
creates, it's just be a yes, always be a
These are
yes.
all super
Give,
vague too. They use the
yes,
vagueness on
give up
purpose.
what you must. It just is like, oh, conform, but like to what specifically? fuck, I don't know, you
And
know?
then they can use it whenever they want.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
anytime you do something wrong, anytime like they'll grab for it, well, you're not always being a guest. You're
Why are
not
you being,
giving up this thing.
yes,
And
yeah,
you will think like, "Oh, I didn't even know it could be used in that way, but now it's being used against me in this way."
yeah. And then the third one, come from you are ready now, which I feel like is a nothing burger, and it's just pillars, and you can't have two pillars, so they had to add a third
Wait,
pillar.
what is
Doesn't
it?
mean
Come
anything.
from?
Come from you are ready now. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. I
Oh,
don't know.
like come from? Come come
Like I said, Demetra, I just think you
So
can't
you're
have two
coming
pillars.
from
There
like
has to be a third one.
the place you're coming from is you are ready now. Is that what that means? You think?
You're the professional, dude. I don't know.
Come from you
I
are
don't
ready
know.
now.
Yeah,
So yeah, you're right. It's kind of just saying the
it's
same thing. I'm ready now. That's where I have to be coming
that is
from.
where you have come from. Yeah,
You know what they
yeah,
do, and then they do with things
huh?
like that is they're like, well, if you don't understand it, then it's just too like you're not there yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're not coming from you already now. You're coming from you're not ready now, and that's on you. That's
Um,
definitely. But there's definitely like the tenets that are like no gossiping, aka don't ever
yes.
criticize anything. Always be an inquiry, which just is the a good thing if you are, self-auditing, a bad thing if you're not ready, not willing, or I feel like anyone who's going into, a situation like that should be able to be like, I need to stop, like at any time, and be like, I'm going to meditate on this. I'm going to think about this. It doesn't always have to be like fire for everybody.
Yeah.
But people aren't given that choice really in this training
And
anyway.
it's
But
not
there was a
good for
lot
a
of
lot of people to be broken like that, like like
no.
it's not safe because you
Yeah.
break their ego and then their ego responds more intensely and it can cause them a lot more pain and they won't see it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, it it was uncomfortable for me, and I am not, and I think a lot of people, my friend who I went with said this to me. She was just, I asked her like why she wanted to come to the training. She said, because I'm not happy and I'm looking around at the other people around me and seeing that they're happy, and what did they do? And I think a lot of people came from that place. And um, I hope people found what they were looking for in a really, and it didn't impact them long term. But I know that a lot of people who were involved were really taken advantage of by this man. The higher up you got,
Yeah.
this was not this was not a good person. And years later, I was teaching yoga, and I decided I just needed like more money. Probably I was probably just broke again, and um, auditioned, applied at this studio to teach at this studio in Seattle. Really good studio. I think that they're not Baptiste affiliated anymore. It's kind of like being a Subway franchise. Like, just pay a bunch of money to Baptiste and you get to put your name on it. And still, same sandwiches, whatever. Um, and I applied, and I knew exactly what they wanted, so I got the job. And they made me go through a couple more little private lessons and stuff. And the teacher who taught me, she is now out of Baptiste. She was really high up. I think she maybe has a podcast where she talks about it a little bit. Shelly Spires, you're awesome. Great teacher. I hope she knows that. Um, I remember her telling me like, "Oh, I have a phone call with Baron tonight." And I was like, "Oh, cool." Like, awesome. She's like, "We're going to be changing. I think that he's going to change Parsvakonasana." I was like, "What do you mean?" The side angle pose. And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "I think he's going to change it. I think it needs to be changed." I was like,
Like not do it anymore or like change the pose
"No, just
itself.
like change the way it's done." And I'm
Ah,
like, "What?" Like, well, like, I just imagine him in like, I don't know. his home in like Vale or something, be like, I think something needs to be done about Parsvakonasana because this ain't right, and Baron can't have it like this, you know. So it was definitely like that uh celebrity worship in the, you know, at the lightest end, cult leader at the heaviest end, I would say. But a lot of people invested so much time, so much money, and people, like I said, people with real trauma, like that can't be can't be solved in 10 days in this giant group atmosphere. But that was interesting. So that was that training was at the beginning of when I started doing yoga, and I just kind of I hadn't really thought about it until all this cult stuff has been coming up the last couple years, and I'm
Mhm.
like, wow, that was fucked up. Like, and it's just like thinking about like how are those people doing? Like, are they good? Like, should someone check on those Baptiste people because they were really deep, and that was like 12 years ago.
It sounds
But
like there's a lot of hallmarks of it, and I'd be curious to
yes,
see what the people who have been very high up in there who have left have said about it,
yeah.
what they do say. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had a few friends who had left, and it was the same thing that we saw. Just they were tired of being they got yelled at by him in front of people, not in front of people. He you know, he was the king. He was the guy at the head. He was
Yeah. It reminds me,
in
now that you're saying this, this is a part of the cult story I haven't told in any like podcast I've told my story on because I've forgotten about it. But it reminds me the way you describe him criticizing people's teaching, the way that we did business in the cult that I was in because it was like this feminine business thing. And
Mhm.
we would have to do her special business sales process where we would have to put together like a Pinterest board of images and music to go with it and sort of propose this is the course I want to do or this is the thing I want to create. And it had many, you had to follow her process, which wasn't all bad. Like it was kind of fun to put together images that have
Yeah.
the energy of the thing you're creating. Uh, but so you had to do the whole thing and then you had to put it in the group. And it was never explicitly said, but you weren't allowed to really do it unless she said it was good. Like, unless she was like, yes, this is on.
Oh, so it's just like it's your separate business, but you're bringing it to her for like her
Correct, because
advice type of thing.
originally the reason that I joined the cult that I didn't know was a cult was because for business coaching. Like
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
know I was joining a spiritual cult. I thought I was joining like a thing that was going to make my business better. And so part of
Hmm.
the business thing was this sales process and so it was people would put together, you'd come up with a name for your course or your event or whatever
Hmm.
you were going to create, and you'd go through the whole process. You'd be like, it smells like this and it tastes like this and it has this song. You'd put it in the group, and then she would either be like yes or no. And at
Yeah.
first, I was like, wow, she must really, like, she knows the truth and she can feel when
Yeah.
something is on or off. But then as time went on, I started to notice like things I would put in, ideas I would have, or ideas other people would have. It seemed to just depend on her mood that day. Like the women, someone would have an idea and it's like, no, it's still off. Or like, no,
She's
you're like whatever criticism, you're not open, you're not trusting the feminine, you're not
she's like
whatever.
lime
And
otter
so
pops. I don't think so.
there
Not
would
gonna work.
be times where I would be like,
Yankee
I have this
candles.
idea.
No.
It's like, here's an event I want to hold. Here's like my image. And it's like, no, no, you can't do that. And it's like,
Did she
okay,
ever steal any of you guys' work?
that's an
Because that
interesting
seems what it would
question.
be like. Because she's like, ooh, all these people with great ideas coming to me. No,
I
you don't
don't
think so?
think so. Not that I can think of.
Okay.
Maybe somebody has
Okay.
a story of it, but no, but it
God,
was
make that
just
Pinterest board private. Just get out of there.
but it's just one of
Yeah.
those things where it's like you could get accused of copying her though. Like maybe you're tapped in too much to her energy and so you're taking her
What?
energy and feeling that and so you're not actually feeling a legit thing for you, you're feeling her. So because her
Yeah.
energy is so strong and
Twist the
powerful.
metaphorical faucet closed. I'll try to tap into that anymore. Oh
But her
no.
energy is just
That's a
so
tricky place to
strong.
be. That's a tricky place to be.
Yeah, so
Because you're
you're
like,
always
I'm in your group.
well, because you're told from the beginning she's holding you. So her energy, and actually her husband's energy, even though he doesn't
Hmm.
really do anything for the business, she says his energy is holding her. So he's holding all of us. So we're all being held in her very, very strong and powerful energy, which is basically like the most powerful energy of any human because she also thinks that she like caused the death of her next door neighbor by her energy because he entered her energy
No.
field. Legit.
Oh
Like
boy. No, but I can totally see this though. Like, I can see myself joining something that's like a little bit more tame, but still whimsy. And then it gets kookier and kookier, and I'm like,
it's weirder and weirder the
hold
longer you
on.
go. And you're just like, what's happening? And you're just like,
She's
did
just
she
kooky.
really
It's
say
fine.
that? But then when you're in the
Yeah.
beginning, you sort of brush it off because you're like, they don't really mean that. Like, because you think
Yeah.
of it how you would think of it.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah.
okay, she's just saying stuff, but she doesn't really
Yeah.
believe it. And then you get
Yeah.
deeper. When I went to visit her, she told me that I was going to lose something before I arrived because she was like,
Yeah.
these two people came to my home and they lost their suitcase and their dog died because the field is just so powerful. So you're going to lose something when you arrive here. And I was like, okay, maybe, I don't know. I had
Did
seen
you lose
enough of her.
something?
Well, no, but I did have the whole cult experience come crashing
Yes.
down. So maybe
Yeah, yeah.
maybe what I lost was
Bigger.
my idea of
Bigger.
her. So maybe it was true after all.
You put it all in a suitcase and it's gone. It's fucking
I did
gone.
not lose.
Yeah.
Nobody close to me died. I did not lose any of my things. I
That's
lost
kind
10
of
pounds.
high stakes, Diva. That's kind of stakes. Like you're like, sorry, Jordan, something may happen, but
You might die because
it's
I'm
the
entering
energy.
this very powerful field. It's just so
You
strong.
understand, Jordan. Sorry.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
actually, I remember. So I worked with a woman. I don't know if she called herself a shaman, but I don't know. She was like British, but she was like, but I don't know if trained is the right word. Like she kind of made it seem like she grew up in like a Native American tribe. I don't understand how that could be, but I got, I don't know, I knew somebody who knew her, and I went to her house in Seattle, and she lived in this really weird neighborhood that was hard to find. And I found it, and I went into her, and I was like, "Oh, your house is a little hard to find." And she told me like, the people who are meant to come here, meant to be here, will find it, and the people who are not meant to work with me cannot find my house. And
Can you
that made
believe
me
her?
feel very special.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
yes. That made me feel very special. So special that I think I gave her like $800, and she had me lay on like a bear rug, and she shook maracas over me for like an hour.
I
And then
did very
she told me I was going to be a large animal veterinarian, and that hasn't happened yet. I'm
Oh no, you're
bummed.
on the wrong life path. Screw
I
being a mother. You
guess.
should you should
Yes.
become a large
I
animal
know.
veterinarian.
She told me there would be giraffes and like I don't know. I don't know if she was on the right track, but yeah, she shook a lot of maracas above me.
Yeah, the
But yeah, you can.
rattles. I did that once.
Yes,
I saw a lot of weird people through my life, and I think about this sometimes
yes,
because I there are very few people, if any, really, that no, there have been a couple, but like very few energy workers who I felt anything at all. Even though everyone was like, oh, they do
yes,
very deep things. There was one
yes.
time that I can think of where, as a woman held her hands over my body, I could actually feel like or I thought that I felt
Yes.
the inside of my body sort of responding. And I still have this like openness
Uh,
to that. However,
oh
I
yeah.
have done crazy things. I had a similar experience with a shaman woman who I drove. Like, there's weird areas of New York like that, like upstate New York, like
Mm-hmm.
weird hippie pockets of. I remember her
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood was full. There was like a crystal grid and like all these things in it. And
Ooh.
similar, I laid down on a rug and she shook things and whatever, but nothing happened.
Okay.
But there's a
Can I
lot of
tell you?
people. I want to tell you one more thing is I hired
Yes, yes.
through the cult leader would make me sometimes hire other people that she wanted me to work with, like energy people. Not make me, but it was kind of like if you didn't agree, then you weren't open and receptive. So and that was like the highest thing you could be was open and receptive.
Yes.
So you kind of had to say yes, because otherwise you weren't being receptive to her teaching. So because of her, I spent $500, 400 or 500, I think it was $500. I paid this woman to alter my DNA. So she was like,
Oh, I totally would have done that. I totally would have done it. Tell me, tell me, tell me.
she was a star shaman and she was going to alter my DNA and she could
Ooh.
like I don't know what. And I was like, even at the time, I was like, this is a little out there for me. But she was so certain. And I was like, all right, she says I need to do it. So I'll do it. So I pay this woman and we do this call together. She was so weird. And then the thing was, she told me like all of the work would take place off the call. So like you have to just trust that she's actually doing something in her free time. Like she doesn't do the
Oh.
energy work on the call. She just talks to you and then
And then
like
after,
over the next few weeks, she's supposed to do her in-depth changing of your DNA. And then at the
what
end, you
a
get the call.
hustler.
You get to like
Work
do the
smarter, not
integration.
harder.
So you're
What a
supposed to do
hustler.
the integration at the end. And so throughout this whole time, I'm like, is she? And then she was in New Orleans and it got hit by some like a hurricane or something, some sort of natural disaster. So all this time went by and she like had never gotten back to me. Like she'd never told me what had happened, if she had done anything to my DNA
Oh
or not.
God.
She just disappeared. And then I messaged her a couple times and she didn't respond. So finally I reached out to
No, what
the
happened to my DNA?
well, that's me. I'm like,
Shit. It's a
what? Like, did
flux.
she set up a grid with my DNA? And then I'm like, I have all these health things happening. I'm like, is that why I'm not feeling good? Like,
Yeah.
was she messing with my DNA? So then I go
Oh
to the teacher and
no.
I'm like, hey, she didn't ever respond, and I'm pretty sick of this by this point. So then she like reaches out to us both and she makes the other woman respond to me. And then she's like, oh, sorry, we're in a natural disaster, like we're whatever, I'll get back to you in a few weeks. Basically, she just disappears. And then I am forced to do the integration call with her because my teacher is like, that's the integration. It's the most important part. So we get on this integration call with this woman that I have zero trust with anymore. And she's like telling me things about and I was just like, this is insane.
Like
This is
it
all
got lost in the hurricane. It's up there. It's like the cow spinning around in the tornado.
yes.
You're
What'd you
like,
do to it?
excuse me, you had one job. Just, you know. Ah, man. I would have done that though. Totally would have done it. Like, take my money. No. Yeah. What were the ones that you like felt something?
I
Like you
mean,
said, there was been a
honestly,
couple times when you're like,
I
whoa.
really,
Is it like a
I
Reiki type of thing or
It's so the one where I felt the woman was a woman I saw here once for like just one session. And that was the only I
hmm.
want to say it was the only time where I felt someone energetically like she had her hand over my liver and she like I felt something move in my
Hmm.
body and I was like, "Whoa." And she was like, "That's your liver." And I was like, "What's happening?"
You're like, is it supposed to move?
But I have done literally
Yeah.
like at least dozens, if not hundreds, of
Yes.
energy people I have hired. And I
Yes.
have never, even a woman who everybody else was like, this is the
Yes.
real woman, I did not feel a thing. So
Okay.
I want to say maybe Reiki. I learned Reiki and I did a bunch of Reiki very early on when I was like
Oh.
20. So
Hmm.
did I feel it then? Perhaps. I definitely had weird experiences like holding a pendulum where I would like feel it sort of catch and like I felt like it was moving with somebody's energy.
Hmm.
But can you ever really
But it could have
tell?
just been a pendulum that was moving,
I
maybe.
don't know. I literally
Yeah.
like now I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I don't really engage with these things anymore. I
Yes.
also wonder now that I've had my experience in the cult with what I really consider to be because I had some crazy spiritual experiences in there, but I think now that we're playing around in a lot of these spaces with very dark forces that we don't understand and like welcoming them in, and that and so I do believe that that is there. To what capacity I don't know, but like I do think that now I think that I've opened myself up through a lot of these new agey things to a lot of dark energy that I had no idea what I was doing and like was not
Yeah.
um I don't know though.
Yeah. Yeah. I I have to give a little credit to the woman with the maracas because so she said like, "Oh, we have to go to these sweat lodges, but they're like invitation only or something." So I
Mhm.
eventually got an invite to sit in a sweat lodge, and she's sitting next to me. And this, okay, I don't know if people are gonna think I'm faking, lying or something, but I'm talking to her about just like again pain around my mom probably like, and she recounts the story of my birth, and it was pretty close, I think. I mean, I would ask my mom. My mom was a really like straightforward person. She's like, I don't fucking remember. It's 30 years ago, you know. Like,
Yeah.
but I was a surprise. I was a month early, and I broke my mom's tailbone, and there was something in that where the spirit of the tailbone breaking went into my body or something like that, and needed to be sent out. And she told like this, she told me like, oh, I can see your mother's face, and like it's very surprising and it's very shocking and blah blah blah. And I was pretty sure that that was legit. Now it's that same memory thing you were talking about, where I'm like, all I know is what people have told me about my birth, and maybe I'm even remembering that wrong and just kind of matching it up to hers, or she is a very intuitive person. I don't know.
I do think that there
Oh,
are real instances of these things. I
me
just
too.
also think that I would guess that most of them are not real.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think it's really easy for anybody to convince themselves that they feel all sorts of things and they're like a magic
Mm-hmm.
shaman star person and they're
Mm-hmm.
not doing anything at all, but maybe they even really think that they are. I
Yeah.
think most of the time they really do think that they are. And then you have the really bad people who know that they're just faking it, making it all up and doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
But
I
I
think
do
going back to
think
the,
that there
yeah, go ahead.
and I don't know if maybe like the real things that do happen, like the real miraculous types of things, maybe maybe all the time or most of the time it's more of a placebo, like you really believe, because I really think our minds are like extremely powerful, and that if you really believe that you're healing or something's happening, like I think that has just such a strong effect that I think that often that can cause
Yeah.
that kind of response. And was it this person that did it to you?
Hmm.
I don't know.
And the, you know, the other things like for me, like meditation was always the
I don't know what happened. I can't hear you.
now.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I don't know
That's
what I
okay.
did. I don't
It
know what I
kicked you
did.
off. Let
Yeah.
me just what time is it? 1:04. Okay, so I can edit that out.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was like a shamanism, like one of the
No.
witch things maybe you learned. Just like I was like, what is about to happen right now? Oh
Oh,
shit.
I've learned it from Jordan because he did film class. So
That's a
he
good
like
idea.
you clap to. It doesn't matter for this, but sometimes on the
Yeah.
audio, if you clap, you see a big
It'll
spike, and
spike.
you're just like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. So anyway, the yoga poses were always like mashed potatoes. Meditation is the main course. That's the pot roast. Like that was always for me the big thing. And so I think that very easily spirals into the new age stuff. And meditation makes you feel really good a lot of times. and you like chase a feeling of like more openness. And then, like we were talking about before, you meet like someone in a Kundalini class who's like, hey, we're doing an ayahuasca ceremony. And you're like, motherfucker, I am in. Like, let's do it. And it's just funny, like, you chase like that more openness and more openness. Like, what are we looking for? Like, what are we like? I just think that the general things that we always have known that make us feel good, like go outside and touch fucking grass, like like
Go for a
drink
walk.
some water, go for a walk, like all those things that make you feel good. And the new age stuff, like I'm glad I went through it because it's looking back, I'm like, wow, that seems like 8 lifetimes ago. And I am grateful I didn't end up too entangled in anything harmful like what you were in, but I definitely could have. Like I definitely could have ended up somewhere there. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting how you get there. I want to know about your time as a witch, and did you have like a witch name, like Luna Moonflower or something? I need to know because I never got the opportunity to be a witch, and I think had it arisen, I might have
Uh,
partaken. But
I'll tell you about my witch time. I also want to tell you about my yoga time, but I'll tell you about
oh
my
yes,
witch
yes,
time.
yes. Sorry, I'm a yappy girl. Sorry,
That's
go
okay.
ahead.
I will, so I'll answer the witch question first. I did not have an official witch name. Unlike my yoga days where for a while, maybe when I was like 21, I changed my name on Facebook to Dimitra Ananda. I had a nice
Ooh,
Sanskrit name.
nice.
Oh.
Mhm.
um
Yes.
my witch years were more so well, it might make sense to tell it more chronologically actually because my
Mhm.
my witch stories are more in my mid 20s. So yoga, what I'll say about yoga for me was that it actually did genuinely save my life at the time when I found it because and I had done yoga a little bit in high school. You know, my first experience with yoga was actually on a McDonald's CD, like a DVD. They were giving out like yoga
Really?
DVD. And I
Yeah.
remember I had this little TV in my room with a DVD player built in, and I would like I put it in, and I remember my family making fun of me because they were like, "Deemer's just doing this yoga," and I was so interested. I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah. I think I
And what
had
I
the
think
Rodney
about now is
V.
like I
Yeah.
always had such a big draw to anything spiritual, but it was never really. I didn't know that that was as silly as it
Yeah.
sounds. I didn't know that that could be found in Christianity because it what
Oh,
the mysticalness of Christianity was not modeled to me in any way. So
yeah.
Christianity felt like a bunch of rules, and then there was
Hmm.
yoga, which was this like mystical, exotic thing. And I did yoga a little bit at a gym in my high school. Honestly, all of my initial yoga teachers, so there was this one woman when I was in high school, but then she moved away and she went to Florida and she kept saying to me, and my friend and I used to go together, and probably was like 16, 17, and she was like, you should go to the real studio, like where she taught most of the time, because she was just doing this
Hmm.
side class at the gym. And I was so afraid to go to the studio. I was like, I don't want to go to the real studio. It's so intimidating. Like all these yoga people. I was just nervous. And then when my brother's accident happened, I was home. So I was 19. I had just turned 19 and I came home and I decided not to go back to school. So I was like, well, um, what am I going to do? And I was getting these emails because I had signed up for emails from the yoga studio and um, they were like, there's this New Year's special. Come on New Year's Day and sign up for whatever deal you got. You got a private lesson and you got all these
Hmm.
things. So I was like, all right, I'll do that. I've never been there before, but maybe I'll sign up for this special and that will be what I do with my time because my brother was in the ICU. He was in a coma, not responsive whatsoever, just like, is he going to die any day? So, uh, when I decided not to go back to school, I went to yoga and it was like I did this yoga class and it was New Year's Day, so there were tons of people. It was so sweaty, so like everybody was happy. I didn't talk to anyone. I cried at the end. And I just sat there and I felt like, wow, like, you know what? I can do this. Like, I can
Mm-hmm.
live. And that
Mm-hmm.
was huge because it was the first
Mm-hmm.
time I felt any sort of peace. And I was not someone who could really sit like that. Like in my first semester of college, I went to one yoga class with my friends and I was like, I think I'm actually too impatient for yoga. Like, I don't think I can do it. But then when this happened, I found this place in myself where I was like, I'm going to be okay. Like, no matter what
Um,
happens, I'm like, I can feel myself. I'm okay. And then I went every day because I was like, I
Makes
would
you
wake
feel
up.
so good.
Yeah. And I would go to yoga
Makes
and
you
I would
feel
be like,
so
oh,
good.
okay, I'm okay. And I would cry. And I'd be like, I'm okay. And then I would go to the hospital. And like, I had this thing that rooted me.
Anchor, yeah.
And it was so important. And so, what really happened, and honestly, I had some really great teachers. I think I was
Mm-hmm.
just very lucky because I've since gone to a lot of teachers who are just seem so disembodied
Yes.
in a lot of ways, or it's just like they're like namaste, and I'm just like
That's the
stop.
reason I think about teaching again is like there's so much bad yoga. Like
There's a
there's
lot
so
of
much
really bad
bad
yoga.
yoga. Like
And
what are we
honestly,
doing?
for whatever
No.
reason, like the woman who owned the studio, she had her flaws, but she was, I think, really genuinely a sweet person at heart, and she was
Hmm.
a good teacher. And there were other really good teachers there. And um, so I only did, they were doing a teacher training that summer. So this was like,
Hmm.
I was barely, like, January 1st, I started. That summer, the reason I really did the teacher training was I had thought about doing it, but I didn't know if they would accept me. Now I know they will accept anybody who's going to pay them money. But I was like, are they
They'll
going
take
to
your
let
money.
me in? Because I was so young. I was like, I was 19. And
Hmm.
I said to my mom, because I was like, I didn't want to go back to the school I had been at because it just felt like I was so happy there, but now my life had changed and I didn't feel like I could go back. And I didn't want to go back to school. I thought maybe I'll move to Colorado and go be, like you said, some apprentice at a studio, or like I'm just gonna
Yeah.
go do something else. And my mom had a breakdown and was just like, I already
Oh.
lost one child. I can't lose another child. Basically
Like
being
I'm just
like,
going to Colorado. It's just a couple states
she
over.
didn't
Like,
mean that. I honestly think maybe she would remember it differently, but like my experience of it was that she was like, now your brother isn't going to go to school and like have this life path that is supposed to happen.
yeah,
So like you can't do that also. It was about me not going back to school. It wasn't like you're going to move far away. It
yeah.
was like I can't have another child who doesn't like isn't
I
successful.
think my parents were like, she has a job. Yay.
So I
But
was
anyway,
like,
yeah.
she needs me to go back to
Yeah.
school. So then I was like, well, let's compromise. What if you pay for my yoga teacher training, which I'm sure was,
That's
whatever,
a
how much,
great deal.
a couple $1,000s. I was like, why don't you pay for that and then I'll go back to school. I transferred to University of Vermont that fall. And they were like, okay, we'll do that. And so I thought it was my mom, but I actually found in a diary recently that it said my dad agreed. So I was like, maybe my dad agreed to that deal. So either way, they agreed, and they paid for my teacher training, and keep it like, my brother wasn't even home. Maybe he had just come home from rehab. He was still not communicating. It was still
Oh
like
yeah. Yeah.
our lives were just a mess. My brother was sleeping in the living room in a hospital bed. It was just like
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy. And so I did my teacher training, and honestly that was for me, especially going through such an emotional period of time. We sat in a circle. It was a small group. It was like 10 of us.
Hmm.
And I just cried. Like I got to my turn and it was like, why are you here? And I cried. And
Yeah.
there was another girl there who I actually am still friends with loosely. Like we're still connected. She was my age and in there too, but everyone else was older. And it was beautiful, honestly. Like it was such a great experience.
Yeah. My
And I did,
200 hour was really like nice like that too.
yeah.
Smaller,
And they
more
took it quite
personalized.
seriously. Like they took
Yes.
the sort of studies of yoga seriously, like the history of it.
Mm-hmm.
They seemed, it was not one of those studios like that you would find in New York City where everyone's so like whatever
Yeah.
in their outfits and
Yeah.
like it wasn't
Yeah.
really that way. It was pretty grounded, I think, and there were some
Yeah.
great teachers that I learned from, and I think that I learned to be a really solid teacher. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think that I was a really good teacher. But I didn't start teaching right away. I because then I went to
You went to
Vermont,
college. Yeah.
blah blah. I was depressed, so I came back home. I like
Mm.
transferred to a school near home, and I did end up starting to teach yoga at the studio. Um, and then I opened my own studio.
In
And
Pennsylvania?
yeah, so this was a couple so this was when I had just turned 22.
Wow. That's
Yeah, isn't that
crazy.
nuts? And it was only because
Yeah.
so like I had transferred, so I was at my third school and I did 3 semesters of school at this school that was like very close to my house in Pennsylvania. And I got my own apartment for a bit.
What
Um,
is that school up there?
Misericordia.
Scranton or something?
No, Misericordia it's called.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't in Scranton. I was
Oh,
in
okay.
it's
For
in
some reason,
Dallas.
I was thinking, yeah.
But
Hmm.
close. I mean, Scranton would be the biggest like nearest city, but
Okay.
it's I'm
Yeah.
like a half
That's what
hour.
I think of when you say Northeast Pennsylvania.
That's what
Yeah.
everybody
Hmm.
would think of. No,
Yeah.
so it's like Scranton, Wilkes-Barre. It's closer to Wilkes-Barre, but it's like
Wilkes-Barre.
even
Okay.
further down than Wilkes-Barre.
Hmm.
So, uh, the studio was in Wilkes-Barre actually, but my studio was in Dallas. So it was like a good 20-minute drive away. So anyway, the reason that I ended up, so I did 3 semesters of school, and then I was like, I didn't know what I was doing. I had changed my major like 4 times. I was like, why am I in school? What am I doing with my life? I care about
Hmm.
yoga. I kept changing my mind. Do I want to be a nurse? Do I want to be a nutritionist? Do I want to be a psychologist? Like I was all over the place. And I was like, I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm going to take a semester off. And I think by this point, my parents were kind of, they were dealing with my brother. They were not really, they were tired of dealing with me. It was just like, Demetrius going to do whatever she wants.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm taking a semester off. And so during that semester off, I was still teaching at the studio, and one of the guys who would come to the studio, um, he his parents owned a building in Dallas, and he wanted to open up a studio in that building. And so we started talking. We ended up getting into a relationship, which was a
Hmm.
mess. It was a total mess. He was like 28 and I was 21, 22,
Yeah.
21. And so we like started talking, and then the more we talked, the more he was like, I was like, I can manage the studio because he had a full-time job. But I was
Hmm.
like, well, I can, like, I have all this free time, so I can run the studio. But then the more we were talking, it was like, well, we should both be like, half owners because
Hmm.
um, I'm going to be doing so much. And so
Yeah.
we both put equal money in. This was like the worst deal for me, but I was so young and I was in love, I thought. I had this
Yeah.
crush.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, let's do it. I had to ask my grandfather because I had money for school. And so he agreed. And my grandfather was like, this is not a good deal for you because he was like a businessman. And I was like, I don't care. Because the deal was like, this guy was going to
Oh,
mop the
yeah.
floor every morning. And I was going to do literally everything else. I was going to teach all the classes. I was going to run a website. I was going to do the email list. I was going to
You're
like
like, Grandpa, but did
hire
you
the
hear about
cleaners.
the mopping? Because I feel
So
like
it was
that's a
like we
pretty
were
good
putting
trade.
in the same money, but and I was doing everything. And it was good for me because I learned a lot of the skills like I still use. It was like the
Hmm.
first time where I was like, how do I make an email list? How do I do these
Hmm.
things? And I had to teach myself. So I learned how to do all this stuff, and that was when the drama started. There's so much drama that
Oh
you would
my
not
God.
imagine in the yoga space
Oh
until
my
you are
God.
behind the scenes.
It's so bad.
It
This
was
between studios, teachers, managers, and teachers. Oh my God.
it was
It is
here
like,
I am, like, I'm like, we're gonna open this studio. It's gonna be great for the spreading of yoga. And this studio is 20 minutes away from the other studio. They're in completely different, there's like multiple towns in between. But the owner of the studio that I had been teaching at got angry that I was opening up a studio. And because people she thought from up there were no longer going to drive down to her studio. So then she forbid all the teachers who I was going to hire to teach at my studio. So she was like, none of the teachers who teach here can teach where you are. And it was like this drama filled,
like a
messy.
verbal non-compete. Like,
Yeah,
there's
she's
not
like,
enough
they
yoga
can't.
to go around.
And
Not
I was
enough
like, I
yogis.
don't understand because I was so young and I was like, what do you mean? Isn't this like all good for everyone? We're all gonna just like, there's gonna be more yoga and more. And it was like,
Mhm.
no. And it was so dramatic. And then I think she did end up relenting and let some people wear. But then even that was a mess because then I learned most no yoga teachers are actually quite neurotic. That's why they like go
Mm.
into yoga. Probably me included.
Mhm.
Definitely me included.
Mm.
But like, so they're some of them were just a mess behind the scenes. They were really flaky. Sometimes they wouldn't
Oh
show up
yeah.
to teach, so I would have to teach, or they would just like reschedule last minute or quit or what. It was a nightmare, like hiring
Yeah.
and firing and trying to deal with all of it. Um I got sick of it pretty quickly. Like we opened, so I was doing months of work to like open it before we opened, but then we opened it January 1st. Actually it was really fun. We had like a midnight class. Like it was like a
Oh,
New Year's Eve
nice.
class. Maybe it wasn't at midnight. I think it was like at just like the evening. Maybe it was like at
Yeah.
7 p.m. on New Year's Eve. And that was
Oh, fun.
beautiful.
Yeah.
There were so many people. It was like packed. I taught that class. It was so
Yeah.
fun. Um, but then uh anyway, there's so much drama and by October I was just like I am
Does
sick
the
of
guy still own the studio?
he so what happened was I got sick of it. I sold my half back to him. Uh
And broke up with him?
we had already we broke up before
Harsh.
I broke up with him
Harsh.
before the studio opened.
You're like, I want literally nothing to do with you anymore.
This was part of why it was a nightmare for me. This is like a thing
Yeah.
you only do when you're so young. It's like
Yeah.
I was in love. So we started talking about doing the studio probably in like August. By end of September, we were a thing. I broke up with my ex-boyfriend to like date this guy. I was
Ooh.
like, "Ooh, this older man."
Yeah.
We dated, had a big crush on him for like a solid month and a half, like 2 months. Went to his family's Thanksgiving, like it was like
Oh
he was
boy.
really in. And then
Demetra, what?
by the
Little
beginning of
Demetra.
December, I was like, I cannot stand this guy. And you know when have you had relationships like that where the switch just like flips? Like I
Uh,
used to be really that way.
yes.
So I was just like,
Yes.
1 minute I was like, this is the best
Yeah.
thing ever. The next minute I was like, I can't stand the way this guy
I
breathes.
can't even be around you ever again.
Yeah.
So,
And he would
like, I
walk.
just,
His footsteps were like really
uh,
heavy. So then I'm in
yeah.
this situation where we haven't even opened yet, but every day he comes in to mop, I hear his footsteps and I'm like, I hate him.
You're like, why are his dry eyes
And I
blinking so
broke his heart.
loud? Like, what the fuck?
Honestly, I
Like,
like broke his heart,
oh,
the poor guy. And then we had to see
I'm
each other
just,
every day. And then I got back together with my ex, and my ex was coming to the studio. So I was like, it was just a mess.
I bet you he like changed his life though, and he like had a glow up after you, and he's like, thank goodness for Demetra for really breaking up with me. And no, you don't think so?
Some of
You
my
don't think so?
exes have had that experience, others have really not. I don't know that I don't know anything about what
Hey,
his
that's
life's like
something.
now, but I imagine
Something.
it's quite similar. But
Hmm.
so, and then the other thing that happened right before this kind of just gave me an excuse to quit. I think I already wanted to quit. Was I found social justice world. So I was like, oh
Oh
no.
boy.
I think I Googled, I don't want to teach yoga anymore because I was tired. I was just like, I'm tired of this
Yeah.
drama
Like,
and all of
what do
it.
you got for me, Google?
First thing that popped up is like yoga is cultural appropriation. And I was like, oh
You're
my
like,
God.
that's what I'm going with.
It's like, there's my
Boom.
reason. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, so those things all combined, yeah, I sold my half of the studio to him. You know, I believe it's still a studio because he then sold it to somebody else. So I think he no longer owns it, but I believe his parents still own the building. And last
Oh,
I
that's kind of
heard,
cool.
it's kind of cool. Last I
Yeah.
heard, either it's a yoga studio or like a Pilates. I think it's
Uh,
changed ownership a couple times, but last time I saw a photo of it, maybe it was a couple of years ago, and they still had all the same decor.
oh, really?
Like I was like, I designed that ceiling. Like it was
Whoa.
like because the ceilings were like silk.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a big learning experience for me. And then but I had a number of really deep, like my yin training. I don't know if you've ever
Mm.
heard of Biff
Yes.
Mythoker.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I did two yin trainings with him, maybe, and like a storytelling.
Nice. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were doing, yes.
He is
That's
like
awesome.
the
Yeah.
sweetest old man with a big white
Huh.
beard, and he was so influential for me. I loved yin, and one day he said to me, my first training I did with him, this is when men can be so, like, men in that kind of power can abuse it so much, and they often
Mm-hmm.
do, but they can also be such powerful forces for good when they're like deep in integrity. This man
Mm-hmm.
saw me, I was like probably 21 or something, and he uh came up to me after one of the classes where I'd been crying, and he was like, if you ever want to talk, like, let me know. Like, and
Oh.
I did. Like, soon that day, I was like, hey, like, I would like that. And on one of our breaks, we went down near the water and we sat on these plastic chairs. And he was like, tell me, like, what happened to you? Like, tell me the story. And
Mm-hmm.
it was the first time that someone like really deeply listened to me. Like
Mm-hmm.
he barely said anything. He just sat there and was fully present while I told him the whole story of my brother. My parents were
Mm-hmm.
divorcing, like all this. I bawled, and he just like sat there and was with me.
Mm-hmm.
It was so impactful. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's such a sweet man. And he later one time I was driving up through Vermont, and he had said if I was ever gonna be up there to I could stay at his house. I was with a friend, and
Oh.
he legit, like, he wasn't even there, but his son was there, and he told me, he like connected us, and he said you can stay at my house, and I slept overnight at his house, and it was like a really humble little house in
Oh.
Vermont. So like I had a lot of really sweet experiences.
Yes.
But what I found that there was also a lot of drama, and then I also found, like you said, there was a easy pathway into veganism, like juice cleanses, a lot of really restrictive sort of things,
Yeah.
rules, um, people being like, your anger is poisoning you. You can't be angry. That kind of, those
Mm-hmm.
sort of teachings being flipped around on you. And I think ultimately, when I was reading about the cultural appropriation stuff, I found nobody wanted to talk about it with me. Now, I think that's all kind of bullshit. Like, I don't really agree with the
Mm-hmm.
cultural appropriation narrative, but I still do think that there has to be room to, like, have conversations about anything. And
Yeah.
I was very shut down, like, anytime I wanted to question it or bring it up. And who knows? I was in my early 20s, so I probably did not do it in a very tactile
So in the
way.
social justice aspect, you're like, you whiteys are just
Mm-hmm.
taking the Indian culture and just,
You can't be a white person and teach
you
yoga,
can't do it. Yes.
essentially.
Yeah. And I went to Rishikesh and I did the ashram thing in India. And it is different. I mean, it's a different experience. It's kind of like going to China and eating Chinese food. It's not the same as here.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yoga in the West still helps people.
It
Still,
does.
it's you know, it's reminiscent. It's not exactly the same thing, and we've kind of taken it and done weird things. Like I don't like going to studios that are like yoga fusion, yoga with weights, yoga lattes. I still don't like that. But you can still have a good experience and feel good and feel, refreshed and
I think
some of
it's
that,
great. I
yeah.
think it's a great practice. I think
Hmm.
it's like very healthy for people to do. And I think the other thing that's important to remember, they brought it over to the West on purpose. Like they wanted to
Hmm.
spread it to the West. So, um, I don't at all think that now.
Hmm.
I've just really divorced so much from the social justice movement in general. But like at the time, I was really,
Hmm.
but looking back, I think it just gave me a really good excuse for something I
Hmm.
already wanted. And I kind of feel sad about, sad isn't quite the right word, but like, had I not been so quick to take that on, I think
Hmm.
I would have continued practicing yoga, which I think would have only benefited me.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I still practice. I practice Ashtanga yoga, which is a self-led, self-guided. And I worked with a teacher in Seattle, but here I just practice. And yeah, I think, like you were saying, like these really rigid things, I do think that I had a lot more discipline back then than I maybe do now. But I think I had to go through that of having the rigid disciplined lifestyle where to be now in this place where I can just be like, if I miss a day, it's all right. It's okay. But yeah, that definitely leads to a lot of like of the discipline and like also being afraid of things that are not like pure,
Yeah.
being afraid of things like if you're gonna, oh man, I was such a militant vegan for like 10 years and I still am mostly vegetarian. I did not really shove it down people's throats, but I will say that nothing it's like politics, religion, and if you say you're vegan, people they are triggered. Like, can I eat meat in front of you? Like,
Well, I
they
think that's
think,
why so many vegans are so intense about it.
yeah, I would try to just be like, oh, I don't eat meat, dairy, and stuff, and people would be like, oh, why? And I'm like, well, I'm an ethical vegan. I don't, and I still am like, oh man, this factory farming, that's really hard to
Factory
reconcile.
farming is really bad.
Yeah, and that's what really gets me too. I'm like, I used to be into like speciesism, where it's just like humans are not better than ants. Ants, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That is sort of let go of, but it is interesting, like with the new age stuff.
Well,
I
you
know
know,
I'm kind of
India is one
yeah.
of like the most unhealthy places in the
Oh, they love
world.
McDonald's.
But
They like
also like
love
just
McDonald's.
their high vegetarian vegan diet kind of like it's not I really don't think that it's good, the vegan like I was vegan for a little, but and I was very ethically vegetarian for a while, but you
Hmm.
know what I found one day was I found an article. This was when the internet was so much smaller and you could just find things like
Yeah,
there weren't as
yeah,
many. You remember like when it just
yeah.
wasn't like there weren't that many
No,
web pages. This woman had
no.
written an article about uh she basically wanted to farm. She was a vegan or vegetarian. She wanted to farm this land, so she bought this land to live off the land, but then once she owned the land, she realized that the only like the soil was no good and basically the only thing that would regenerate the land was having cows. And then
Nitrogen
when she
into the
had
soil.
cows, what?
Nitrogen into the soil because
It
it's
was
not,
whatever, like she was
yeah,
like,
you
it's
need
only
the
good for
ecosystem.
animals.
Hmm.
And then she found that having cows, it was this really beautiful journey through like what happens to a cow. Like it's actually kind of cruel to let a cow die of old age because what happens when they get really old is they get stuck in the mud or they get torn apart by
Mm.
wolves or they
Mm.
just get like
Oh, huh.
she describes this like this ordeal where their cow died because its hooves were like, it was old and it just got stuck in the mud. It couldn't move anymore. So it like they found it starving, and she was like, you know what? Is it cruel to if we just like kill this animal
Mhm.
with a shot to the head and it had like a super happy life up
Yeah.
until that point? Is that less
Yeah.
cruel than like letting it die this terrible death? So
Yeah.
I don't there but for me it was so impactful where I was like, "Oh, it's not always ethical, like more
Yeah.
ethical." And it broke apart some of these different things, like what my vegan diet was doing to the
Yeah.
environment and whatever. And I was just like, okay. And then decided to eat a steak, and I cried out of joy when I
I
was
don't
eating
think I haven't eaten a steak. I haven't gotten that far.
What?
No. I don't know. I get
Do you know I did
people
carnivore in the summer and I ate only beef and lamb for 4 months?
did that. Was that okay on like your system, or were
I'm
you
not
like,
sure. I
I
do
just
not
love
want to say
bread?
for sure to anybody whether it was a good or bad idea because I'm not entirely sure net.
Yeah.
But I will say, it took my inflammation way down. It made my
Hmm.
autoimmune symptoms way better. I had a rash under my eyes. It went
Interesting.
away. I lost a bunch of weight.
Interesting.
I lost all this, like, I was holding so much puffiness in my face. It went
Yeah.
away. Like, it had a
Yeah.
lot of benefits. And a lot of people do carnivore for a long time successfully, but I got sick of it. By like the end, I
I
was just
don't.
like, I'm gonna puke if I have to eat any more fat of beef and lamb. And I just was, because you have to eat a lot of
I
fat
just
if you're
don't
gonna
want to
do
live in a world without bread. I just.
that. There is that.
I.
I only did it
I
because
don't
I was
want that
in
life.
so much
Yeah.
pain that I was like, it's either
Oh
this or
gosh.
medication. So I'd like,
Oh gosh.
I was like, I'm just gonna do it and see what happens. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so
People in Pennsylvania used to make fun of me because I would take pictures of the cows, like on the farms, because I was like, "Whoa, cows!" and the big horns and stuff.
they're
Because we
so
have that in
cute.
Seattle.
The best thing
Yeah.
about cows is you put your hand in their mouth and they lick you with their tongue, and it's
Oh,
so rough. Like they have the
yeah.
most rough tongue. And then you
Yeah.
get like me and you buy a cow and then you eat the tongue and you have to slow cook it
Woo.
and peel the roughness off, and you're like, "Oh, this is the thing that licks my hand."
Wow.
It's
And you're
like,
like, I feel like that's like a real human thing. Like you're like when if you went fishing and caught the fish and brought it home and ate it, you're like, whoa, I
well, I
am
did not
doing
kill the
it.
cow.
No,
But
no, no, no.
but
Yeah,
yeah, it
yeah,
is like you're like,
yeah,
"Oh, we don't get
yeah,
that experience a lot with our food." And you do when you have these certain
yeah,
organs, or like a
yeah.
heart, like a beef heart, when you have to, you can imagine as a med student,
Oh,
like
yeah.
all the little, whatever they're called, veins and
Valves.
arteries,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
they're there. So you have to clean the heart.
yeah,
So you have to like,
yeah, yeah.
and you're holding it and
I
you're like, oh,
when I was in Pennsylvania, you guys were talking about this on your recent podcast. So when I was in Pennsylvania, I was working 911, lots of Amish people, and
do they call
th-
911?
from time to time,
Okay.
yes, they are definitely resources they don't have, and they don't go anywhere fast. So if they have to go somewhere fast, they got to call.
Okay.
Um, and sometimes they get in the horse and buggy accidents, and
Right.
the horse goes down, and people come and they just take all the parts of the horse away, and they presumably do stuff with them, like
Uh-huh.
make them into stuff. And I'm like, man, circle of life, just strong with these people.
Were you gonna say
But,
something else about the 911 or the working?
um,
Or
oh,
was
well,
it
like
that?
when we would go to calls, when we go to calls, there'd be a horse and buggy accident. We'd be,
Oh,
treating the person. That's when we'd see
yeah,
that. But
that was it.
yeah, in general, though, those people connected to the land.
I'm
But
really interested in the Amish. I would love to talk to like an
really,
ex-Amish person. Not like I don't want to be Amish, I think.
yeah,
But uh I think that their way of doing life in many ways makes much more sense, and they seem to be much happier in general. I know that there are still some bad things that occur, but I just feel like
yeah.
you don't think so?
Well, interacted with them a lot in Pennsylvania. I think they're it's interesting because imagine how productive and how good you could get at stuff if you had no option for computer,
Yeah.
internet, any tech. Imagine how good you would be. Like it's almost like imagine if you were asexual and never ever like noticed a man or woman. Like how productive could you be in
Yeah.
life? Like it would
Well,
be amazing.
I would love to have an
Yeah.
Amish built house, right? I think they have just like the
Yes.
most,
I
yeah.
know they always say like your Amish furniture will like outlive you. You'll get sick of it before it breaks. Like Amish houses are wild. Yeah, I mean, most of the time don't have electricity, but they'll use shit, what are those called? Like the lights
Yeah.
you can plug in like oh my God, I'm so not handy. It's like the shop lights, you
Oh,
know? So they would bring those out for us when we would come for 911 calls. And I'm also not, I only saw them when it was like a bad situation.
right.
Um, so I see
I
the
really
worst of
have
it. So
not
I'm
ever
sure
hung
there's a
out with
lot
an
of great
Amish
people
person.
too.
I don't know
Very
any Amish
sweet.
people, but
There was
I
a,
read a lot of
yeah,
articles about people describing like their time living with the Amish or their time um
yeah,
as an Amish person before they became ex-Amish. And I just think that they have such strong community.
yeah. I
They
mean,
have
there's
like
still
10
some
kids
of those
each.
things that are like, not the best. Like when I go to a 911 call, the man won't talk to me as the paramedic. He'll only talk to like
Uh,
a male paramedic or
yeah.
EMT, which is like, all right, whatever, dude. That's fine. But also, there's still sort of things like that that would maybe be a little tough to swallow. But yeah, they have a lot of kids. I don't. They're very standoffish and they are very flat emotionally. So you could go to a pretty horrific 911 call and they're all pretty. And you're like, it's not. And it took me a while to learn that it's not because they don't care. It's just because their culture is just they do not emote, and
I
that's a
also
little
wonder
hard to like.
how much
Yeah,
of that is dependent on like you all being there. Like, do you think
yeah.
they,
But I would consider the situations
yeah,
I'm in with them to be very um high stress emotionally, to where that like if you did have that in you,
yeah,
it would come out. You
right,
know, we're talking really serious stuff.
yeah.
Um, they they also have a lot of congenital issues in their communities, which is hard on kids.
Hmm.
Um, so, but anyway, I don't know how we got there, but yeah,
Well, I'll tell you,
yeah,
I could tell you a bit about being a
yes,
witch. There's not really as
yes.
much to tell because it was more independent. Because I had gone through my cultural appropriation phase, which was like, so I was like, as a white
Mm,
woman, I'm not allowed to do anything because,
mm,
of course, I was not interested in Christianity because I thought that was it was just rules and not very magical. And then I had done the New Age stuff, and I was like, well, this is no good because um, I'm a white person, so I'm not allowed to do it. And so then I kind of took a year or two off from like anything spiritual, and then uh but I was still missing. Like I was missing something. And so
mm.
somehow I came across like I found Carolyn Elliott's stuff. Do you know who that is?
No, I don't.
I don't recommend it. I don't
I feel
recommend it,
like
but
it
she was
was
my
not
introduction to being a witch. So she had this course called Influence.
intro
I
to
think she's quite.
witchcraft.
The
Nice.
thing is, I don't know enough about her personally, but I have taken her courses. I feel that she's not very honest. I feel that her life is not what I would want. I and I she came through one taste too. I think there's a lot of I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that she is like she may be actually good at heart, unlike the leader of the cult that I was in. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't really know. I didn't interact with her ever personally. I just like took her programs. But she taught like uh uh spells and like basically praying to planets. So it was like Venus or the sun or Mars or Mercury. Like depending, you'd make offerings, you'd decide to work with one planetary energy. And I liked this when I found it because, first of all, when I found her stuff, I found her through an article and she was making lots of money. So I wanted to have a business where I made lots of money. Like I wanted to have my own business. And I was back in school again at the time for the fourth time.
Mm-hmm.
So this time I was in Pittsburgh, which I loved. And I was doing her stuff. So I started doing these like rituals with planetary energies. And um I just felt like she could like have whatever she wanted in life because she was like a magical witch, and I was like, that's what I want to do. So I started making offerings. She has this thing she calls existential kink, where you essentially get off on all the things that you don't like,
What?
which again
That's
I think is kind of this gross interpretation of a real teaching and like um a real
yeah,
spiritual truth, but I think it's kind of taking it and turning it into this thing. But you essentially like lay there and can have like an energetic orgasm. Like you have this sort of getting off on how miserable you are and how bad your life is.
whoa. I'm
So,
not sure I would have like the skill to like do those mental gymnastics. I'd be like, I'm just miserable and no orgasm.
well, it's all about exploring the part of you that likes being in the situation you're in. And you know what? This is
Yeah,
why I say it's like you're taking something that I think is coming from a true place, but turning it into what I think ends up becoming a
yeah.
very culty thing that is not helpful for most people. Um, but it is, I think it is beneficial always to look at what part of you does like, because like we can get very identified with being a victim. We can really like being
Mm.
like
Oh
if
gosh,
you go
yeah.
into whatever Reddit threads, groups of people, go in a group of people with chronic pain, try
Oh
to tell them
yes.
about any
It's their
natural
whole
way of anything,
identity.
they will rip you to shreds. They are like holding on to that. And people don't like being told that, but it is true. So like there is that aspect,
Yeah.
you know? But anyway, so I started, and I liked this because it was planets are not tied to any ethnic group. So you're allowed to pray to planets no matter who you are. No one can tell you
Yes,
that you're
whiteys
being.
can be witches. There's nothing that says you
That's
can't.
why like witch
Yeah.
stuff
You're
got
like,
such a
I
big.
found the loophole. Yes.
That's why I think witch stuff got this big resurgence. Like Urban
Yes.
Outfitters was selling like witch
Oh
kits
God.
for a while.
Witch
So
kids.
so I was
Intro to
doing things
witch
like I would take
witching.
my menstrual blood and like pieces of my hair and I would bury
I
them
remember
outside
that.
with like
Yeah.
notes. Like I would write what I wanted and I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, you tell me. I was making offerings to Venus when I met Jordan. I was like, Venus, please.
Interesting.
But all my flowers, to be completely honest with you, all my stuff would always mold because I would like leave my offering.
Ugh. And you're like, what does this mean?
I'm not a very like I'm kind of forgetful in that way. So I would like go pick
Mm.
flowers in LA and then I would put them in this water and then I would leave
Oh,
them
the
there.
water in LA? Your plants are fucked.
And
Oh no.
they would mold. And
Yes.
so then there would be my offering to Venus, but there's like moldy cups of tea and like moldy flowers. And I was like, I don't know if
You're
this
like, pretty
is.
sure this still counts, but I don't know. No, that's funny though. That like things intersect and you're like, ooh, I think Venus was my girl. She was something there. But
So
yeah, I
who
don't know.
knows? I mean, it all
Yeah.
dropped away. Really, my transition out of being a witch was. And I liked being able to call myself a witch because people are like
Oh
scared of
yeah.
witches. And I was like, I'm a witch.
100%.
And then I
100%.
joined the cult. So that got replaced by like the leader of the cult that I was in was not a fan of making offerings to any sort of deity or being because she felt that then you would have to give something in return. Like they would take something away from you
Mm,
or something.
hmm
So they
She was
might give
like,
you what you
just
wanted,
me,
but
bring
then you
things
would
to me. Yeah.
yeah, so instead I turned that all into like I stopped doing that and I just turned into like worshiping the feminine, which really I now think that this underlying thing I've always felt, like I used to call it life, then I called it the feminine. I don't think she felt the feminine the same way that I felt the feminine. Um but for me it has most deeply kind of all clicked into place when calling it God and being like, "Oh, I've
This is what I was gonna say
it's
about new age stuff. They will do anything
to not say
except for
God."
say God.
Yeah.
The inner light, the universe, the whatever. They will
Spirit.
circle around the spirit. And I just think to myself, that is so confusing. And like when my son starts asking me questions like, what what am I worth? What gives me worth? What does that mean? It is just it's a lot of it is doesn't mean anything. And it's too hard. It's just there's no foundation. Like with Christianity, you can be like, this is what we believe. This is why, you're loved. You're a loved person. You're a worthy person to be here. With the new age stuff, is sort of like, well, you got to kind of do this work, and then later on you might try mushrooms and just like
It
have
also
weird
tells you
dreams
that
for
you
5 months.
God.
Yes, and like you're gonna worship something. So money, sex, yourself. It's
I
not
think
healthy.
self really take because you decide that you're God and you are
Yes.
everything, and then people start like self worshipping,
Yeah. Yes.
which is
And
actually the biggest sin kind of in Christianity is like pride.
yeah. And I'm so sorry. I have a horrible habit of interrupting people. I did not
Okay.
mean to interrupt you there. Yeah, that it's interesting that you found the same. Okay, let me give it a shot. Your cult leader. Let me give it like a was she like did she wear a lot of like jewelry and kind of like a lot of dark lipstick and like have like fancy clothes? Did she?
Do you know who she is?
No.
Or you're just
No, I don't. No, I'm just
um
giving it a shot because I feel like I know women not that intense, but was she like decorated?
yes. So
Ah, yes, I knew it. They always
yes,
are.
definitely with
Yes.
some jewelry and some, when she got really weird was right after I left, because
Okay.
she would always dress up
Yeah.
and things, but it got weirder when I left and she held events where she was like kind of made herself look like a legit goddess with like a headpiece and
Oh,
all these things, and then she
nice.
sang because her dream is to secretly be Beyonce, and so she like will make
She's singing
everybody
Drunken Love. I'm
like
drinking.
literally like like held on a stage, like held a concert, like made everyone listen to
She's
her
like, this ain't
sing.
Texas. What? That's amazing. Wow. Not amazing, but
But
also
there is like
just,
a yeah, looking the part, right? So you have to like,
oh, yeah.
she would term it as becoming the energy, like I don't know how she would frame it, being in service to the
The,
energy by
the way I think about these leaders is I'm always like, well, Baron Baptiste, he still has to go to the dentist. Still has
yeah.
to go to the DMV. Like I imagine them, and like I imagine your cult leader like ordering a tiara on Amazon and being like 2 day shipping, bitch, get it here. Like like they still have to. There's still like just humans walking around.
Oh yeah,
You
she was
know,
an awful human, I thought, in her
but they
daily
present
life.
themselves like this tiara
Like a
came to me. I
magical
found it
being.
in the woods. You're like
Well, and then you
even
have
that.
the people, because then from what I understand, when I left, she started deciding she was the official channel of something to do with Mary and the Rose
Ooh.
lineage of Mary, or Mary Magdalene, or some like kind of adjacent thing to
She
kind of
rewatched the Da Vinci
Christianity.
Code and she was like, I could pull that one off.
But do you notice? I noticed some people doing this with Christianity where, like, even like you said, people don't want to say God. I feel like New Age people sometimes, when they get into Like finally they might start saying God, but then they still want to like only take the non-traditional parts of Christianity. Like they get really into like Mary Magdalene and how
Yes.
she had this sex with Jesus and these like sex
Yes.
rituals of her and or like they're the channel for whatever.
Yeah. Because there's some whimsy in the Bible. There's
Well,
some whimsy, and there's some interesting stuff, and they definitely, yeah, I can definitely see the cherry picking. And the angels, people get, I feel like, really into the angel, like Archangel Michael, like all
yeah.
those things. And they're like, oh, I can do that, just not the Jesus thing. That's too
Yeah.
much,
And that's
you know?
the weird thing is like I feel like when you really go into and I haven't I mean I barely know anything really about Christianity. I feel like I'm a baby, but I uh in some books I've read, and maybe this is a bit more like Christian mysticism, but there's just a lot of mysticalness. I mean, you go like the church where I grew up in, I mean,
Hmm.
I was baptized. I didn't really, but I went there for like funerals or whatever. It was the Greek
Yeah.
Orthodox church. You go into a
Oh,
Greek
okay.
Orthodox
Yeah.
church, it is stunning. There's uh icons everywhere. It's painted, it's beautiful. You walk in and there's the incense smoke, so the priest will like they have like this bell, it like makes sounds and
It's,
it gets smoke
yes.
everywhere and they sing the whole time in Greek. It's like they're chanting the whole ceremony,
Hmm.
the whole sermon is chants.
Oh, yeah.
And you feel like you've entered this like
Yes.
mystical, like as when I went back for the first time I was like this was here the whole like I was born into this, but I ran
Hmm.
to do everything but it. Like I was
Yeah.
just like, give
And
me
it,
like everything else is so much more
yeah.
magical than Christianity.
I used to do like take an edible and go to kirtan, you know? And then you leave and you feel like one of those like blow up guys at the car dealership. You're just like, whoa, like feeling good. But I feel like what is so much the difference between like chanting the Hindu mantras and then like it's a manufactured experience. Whereas with Christianity, it's like there's so much history behind it, especially Orthodox and Hindu. Definitely, there's history behind that. But the way we do it, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But with Christianity, I feel like Catholicism and Orthodoxy, it's like there's so much history interwoven into those faiths. It's like an endless. It's like the path of it would be just fascinating and also like a similar self discovery. Like people don't people don't see it that way. I think in our generation, maybe people grow up going to Sunday school, going to youth group, and then they're like, well, that ain't cool. Like, I don't know. So they go worship other things, join a yoga studio, whatever, work for Amazon. I don't know. Do something that they can really dive into,
Yeah.
but it's not quite the same. It doesn't really like scratch the same itch, you know?
No.
I can see that.
For
Yeah.
me, it felt so different coming back and reading the Bible and feeling this sense of like peace. Like and in a
Mm.
different way. Like I talked about that, when I like first went to yoga or whatever. But this was different and that was what sort of because when I first started reading the Bible and like actually started praying and sat with it, like I didn't really fully believe. I was like, well, let me just try it out and just see. But then what happened was like the more that I did it, I didn't know anything other than I feel really deeply at peace when I do this.
Hmm.
And like I don't know what that means, but I know that I've done so much spiritual seeking. And even though those things have brought me peace in different ways at different times, I never felt quite this like grounded peace in this way. And it was different.
And you were saying earlier how like a lot of the yoga and new age thing says like don't be like let go of anger, let go of all this stuff, but like there are Bible stories like I'm thinking of Jesus in the temple like being angry and flipping over the booths and stuff and like it's not like Christianity doesn't endorse not
Yeah.
embracing all the whole spectrum of your emotions,
Yeah.
which it is an interesting difference too, because it's a human thing to be angry,
Yeah.
and it's
Well,
not
God is
useful to,
angry a
yeah.
lot, it seems.
He's mad. He's pissed. I mean, can you blame him though? Like, we are just like, we're fucking things up.
A little
From
bit of a
start
mess.
to finish, he's like, what the fuck, you guys? Again.
Have
Yeah.
you now come back to Christianity then? Is that sort of where you're at, or do you
I
don't
have
know?
not gone to it. I have not gone to a church or anything, but like I said, I have that foundation, and we're moving again, and I'd like to find a community that fits. I was a musician. I'm a musician, and I did a lot with my church then. That was like I was involved in that a lot, so that kept me in it a lot. So I don't know.
Piano?
Yes, and not that I have to do that again, but I want to find like the right place, because I want to actually do it and not just be like, well, this is. And again, I always had the suspicion of like pastors and stuff. I'm like, why does this pastor have like a Harley Davidson? Like, what? Like, we get in the collection trailer? What is this? So it
That's
have
what
to
I
be
think
the
is going to
right.
be really important.
Yes, yes, yeah. But I do love seeing your conservative awakening. Ugh, love a conservative gal. This hit me in like 2016. Like, sorry, Dad, if you're listening, the most flaming liberal. But like, I love seeing it. I'm like, oh, once the eyes are open, you cannot shut them again.
Was that when
And
you
I
you
love
changed in 2016?
2016. I started dating a guy, and he was from Wisconsin, and he was a pretty staunch libertarian, which I still kind of consider myself, but my social views tend to be definitely conservative. And um I did hear someone say though, like, if you're not a liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart. If you're not
Yeah.
a conservative when you're older, you don't have a brain.
Yeah.
So I think like that progression is not, abnormal for you to have
Did you
gone
vote
through
for
that and
Trump in
stuff.
2016? Were you like,
I have too many relatives
okay,
in the I will say, like, it was a hard decision. That's what I'm gonna say. That's
okay.
what I'm gonna say. I I have a dad who's a summer of love, Bay Area, California hippie for life, and I will say it was a hard decision. So yeah.
When you say now you feel more libertarian, I feel like my only exposure to libertarian sort of thought has been when I was super into powerlifting. There's a lot of communities of
Ooh, starting
powerlifting.
strength? Did you
Yeah,
do starting? Dude,
that was
what the
good.
heck? We have like some things. That's funny.
Did
Yeah.
you do
Rip.
starting strength?
Yeah, yeah. Mark
Did you
Rippetoe.
did you go meet him?
Yeah, I went to, man, I went to Wichita. It was a guy I was dating who was into it. And we powerlifted for years, and it was so much fun. And I don't do it anymore because it was mostly just like a fun thing I did with them. But
Oh my
yeah.
God, I
Anyway, but
went.
like, huge libertarian
They are
thing. Isn't that
a lot of those
funny?
guys are big libertarian guys.
Isn't that funny?
He was
Yeah.
he's not always the nicest guy. He was the guy who
No.
I met him and I was like in his class, like I took their workshop and
Oh,
he
nice.
barely paid me any attention all weekend. But then when we're in class, I'm asking a question. Uh, he asked my name. Like I said, I'm Demetra. Or he said Demetra, and I said Demetra, and he said I don't care. And I was like,
Oh,
that was like his
oh my
attitude. It was
gosh.
just like,
So I went to the first like strength con they decided to do in Wichita, I think.
yeah, in
No, it's not
Wichita.
it's
That's where
not
I
that.
went. I went there.
Is it Wichita? What is the name of
Isn't
it?
it Wichita?
Isn't that
Or no, maybe
Kansas?
it's in
Oh
no,
God.
isn't it in
It's in
Oklahoma?
Oklahoma. Shit, I have
Is
to
it
Google it
Wichita,
now.
Oklahoma?
No. Oh
I
God.
went because I flew into Dallas, Texas, and then I drove north.
Yep. We took like the little oh shit, what is it? Okay, well I'm not gonna be able to figure this out. But yeah, so
Well,
we went to this
I'll look it
strength
up.
con. I went with my boyfriend at the time,
Yeah.
and um so we got there. It was super unorganized, and they were like, "We're gonna do a whiskey tasting for like raffle it off.
Wichita Falls, Texas.
Wichita Falls, that's it.
That's why yeah.
And
Okay.
yes, and it was basically like they had bought too much whiskey and they were like, we gotta get rid of, we gotta offload it. And I got chosen and I was like, fuck yeah, I'll do a whiskey tasting. We hadn't like had a break all day, and so we hadn't eaten. And I was just like, woo! Like, I was tasting this whiskey. I was like, I fucking hate whiskey. And then I was starving and it was horrible. And I look over and Rippetoe is eating a foot long Subway sandwich. And I'm like, woo! So I walk up to him and I'm like, hey, can I have a bite of your sandwich? Just like as a joke.
Did he like
And
you?
he just like looked at me. And I was like, all right, see ya. Like, I thought it was the funniest joke, but I'm like saying it now. I'm like, ooh,
That starting
oh,
strength is a little bit culty as well. The thing is,
oh, definitely.
I've really found myself pulled to these people like Rip and
Mm-hmm.
like these people who were like, this is the absolute way. And
Mm-hmm.
because he was very
Mm-hmm.
adamant that starting strength is the only, and for anyone who doesn't know, it's basically like just barbell lifts. So it's like
Linear
back squat, and you
progression.
have to do it in a very particular way. It has to be a low bar squat, and then you have
Mm-hmm.
overhead press, and you have bench press, and you have deadlift and power clean. But like you only barbell lifts. He is very anti basically
Yes.
supplementing anything else.
Anything.
And I love that. I got really strong too. And I was
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
this is it. And I actually got hired. I got myself hired at a gym in my mid-20s. I did not have a personal training degree, but I like my boyfriend at the time was in Boston and I went to live with him for a few months before we traveled and I wanted to get a job. So I went to this gym and I basically pitched myself. Like I was like, I did this starting strength thing and like I'm gonna get my personal training certification. So, and I did
They were
want
like,
to.
you're hired.
Yeah, well,
Cool.
he hired me, and that was where I learned a lot about sales because I had to go pitch people like cold on the floor. Like, I had to walk up
Ooh.
to them and be like, hey, do you want
Ooh.
a free personal training session? And then I was supposed to sell them into a package. But they got pissed at me because I did have some people sign up with me, but I would only do starting strength with them. So no matter
Because you're
what
like,
they
this is the
wanted to
way.
do, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like the guy who's my boss, he'd be like, his name was Cedric.
Mm.
He'd be like, Demetra, like
Trick.
you have to do anything. Like you can't only do barbell lifts. And I was like, why? This is like the best thing to do.
Like progressive load. It's the only thing that matters.
We have to add five
Like,
pounds every time. Every time we go, that's newbie gains. They have to drink a gallon of milk a day.
you're like, yes, you gotta get the go mad. And have you read this 600-page boring ass book? Like,
I read it.
because I feel pretty superior that you're even asking me to do that, Cedric. Like, I was totally, I was,
thought I was gonna be his like superstar salesperson, and
oh
then
my
I quit.
gosh.
But I was just like, I'm only doing starting strength.
Yeah.
But I also, do you know who Susan Weed is by chance?
No, I don't think
She's an
so.
herbalist, but that was another woman
Ooh.
who I like.
Oh.
She's had a lot of allegations of abuse come out
Oh
against
no.
her. She's in New York State, in near Woodstock, New York, and I went to a couple of her in-person workshops, and she's like an old lady. She considers herself Baba Yaga, like the crazy witch in
She's
the
like,
woods.
I have to finger you with clary sage or you're gonna die.
She choked a woman because the woman put lettuce into a plastic bag and she wanted to tell her what it felt like to the lettuce to be choked. So she like choked her. She has a lot of rules, and
I'm trying to, like, because what do you
she
mean?
just she
What?
feels what the plants feel. So she like
Oh,
yeah,
those
so
carrots were
she would
murdered. Gotcha.
she
Yes.
would put she and so I saw her behave. I was like, she's like really intense. But that's how like they're like, oh, if you
Oh, I
can
love intense people.
yeah, and they're just
Intense
like,
is
if you
good.
can't
Yeah.
handle the intensity, then you're not like in with the group. And I was like, I can handle it. And I signed up. I was gonna do her summer apprenticeship, which apparently people have had horrifying experiences during.
Oh no.
But that's
That's
another thing,
awful.
kind of like your training, where there's no service and you can't have your cell phone. So Uh,
Mm-mm.
that was ultimately, I was gonna do it. I paid, I was like in, and then it
Mm.
was like you had to go all summer. You couldn't contact your family, you couldn't like talk to anyone.
Whoa.
And
That's,
yeah, it's in retrospect there are a lot of red flags, but like I just
yeah.
felt I didn't want to go that long without seeing my brother, and so I just was like I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
do it. And so luckily I avoided her, but now there's all these stories. So I feel like I've been drawn to people like that, or I was in my 20s, very
Mm.
naive and very just like I thought it was powerful. Like when Rippetoe was like, I don't care what your name is, I was like, ooh, he's so
You're like,
confident.
yeah, yeah. No, there's something about it. There's definitely something about it. Um, yeah, it's, and also these people kind of package, they gift wrap it in something good. Like even, I don't know if you remember when you were in the yoga world, like how people would always be quoting Osho.
Yeah,
And you've probably
I
seen
have
Wild
seen it.
Wild
Yeah,
Country,
yeah.
and you're like, whoa, that guy. Um, and
Yeah.
years later, I remember that I went to Bali Yoga Fest. I went to Bali for like 2 months, and I did the like ecstatic dance.
Yes.
And it first of all, we didn't know Osho was like the Bhagwan. Didn't know. We didn't see that. We didn't make that connection obviously back then. And it was like, so this is so funny to me. The first 15 minutes, you just shake. You just like shake your body for 15 minutes.
Uh,
And then 15 minutes, you like dance ecstatically. I don't know, but it was fun. And then 15 minutes, you just vibrate like a smaller shake. You just vibrate for 15 minutes. And then 15 minutes Shavasana. And like, I don't know, you feel kind of good after that. Dancing is fun.
yeah.
You're shaking, you're vibrating. It's
Uh-huh.
great. And like the man said some wise sounding things.
Yeah.
There's sort of this shiny part on the outside, and then you learn more and you're like, oh,
You know,
that ain't right.
Jordan's like main mentor lived there with Osho. Like
In
on the
Antler
farm or
or
whatever.
something.
What?
Oh yeah, yeah. What was that called? What was that city called in Oregon?
I
I don't
don't
know,
know.
but
But he
but
lived there
yeah,
for a bit,
yeah.
and Jordan found him to be um like quite an integrity. Like, he was a good mentor, but uh he did, he spent time in that place, and I don't know.
Sometimes those people can see things like from the outside
Yeah.
in and be like, take the good, and it's yeah, it's crazy looking back and being like, now that there's been like a culty sort of awakening with things, and you're totally onto something with like the wokeness being a cult, because I don't try, but you cannot get through to those people.
No.
And I was in Seattle, I lived in Florida, Pennsylvania, and now here in Wisconsin. And it's like, why do people outside of like the big city centers why are they able to talk with each other and live their lives and be happy like next to a neighbor that doesn't believe the same thing? And then in, you know, my experience, LA, Portland, and Seattle, it's like you cannot convince people that because they have conservative values, they're not like evil.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's kind of the main problem I
yeah.
think that I see is just that the left cannot tolerate the right, but the right can tolerate the left.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And I can't, it's a libertarian. Oh gosh, don't come after me. But you hear like, we don't want you to think this way. You shouldn't be able to say these things like hate speech and stuff. And a libertarian's perspective would be like, I don't agree with you, but I'll fight for your right to say it,
Yeah.
you know, instead of I want to take away your right to
Yeah.
say certain things,
But is
you know.
libertarian just like kind of like no government?
I mean, there's spectrum. There's a spectrum for sure. For me, I mean, I probably identify more with conservative values now than libertarianism. But I
Because
still
what is
have
the difference? I
a,
don't really know what the difference is between just
so a
libertarian.
libertarian might tell you like taxation is theft, right?
Yes,
Like
I kind of,
taxation is theft.
I kind of
Leave us.
think that.
Me too. I know. Oh my God. It's ridiculous. But like all taxation is theft. And if we want roads, then people should donate money and build roads themselves.
Ah,
And I do agree that the government is the most inefficient thing
right.
that has ever existed. But also, I'm like, well, having worked for the fire department, having worked for a city doing EMS, like, there are some things that need to be funded.
You want
We need a
some, yeah,
military, you know, um, we have to take care of, you know, widows and orphans.
yeah,
Like, like there are things like that. But a diehard libertarian might be like, the government has no business telling you what to do or anything like that, which is why it hasn't really caught on to be
right.
get too many votes because there are people who
Yeah,
are like, we probably need some like more checks and balances than that.
yeah.
But in general, I still have the thing in me that's just like, taxation is that.
I
Why
feel
are
that
you
appeal.
taking my money?
But
You
I heard
know?
people have the sort of idea that you could perhaps pay for certain social programs without taxation. If your government was making, with tariffs
Yeah.
or whatever, like there is a way, right? And because federal income tax didn't always exist.
Yeah. And there, I, smarter minds,
Yeah.
I hope could figure it out. Maybe AI someday will be like, this is how we have to do it to make it work, you know? But, like, I, I wish there was more of an element of like voluntarism in it. I see a lot of things and I'm like, I don't want to fucking pay for that. And I also see, people who are like, my student loan should be forgiven. And I'm like, what you're saying is that you want the hairdresser
Yeah.
in your town to pay your loans. You
Yeah.
want you know, the convenience store owner. You want that's what you're saying. Like it doesn't come out of nowhere,
Yeah.
you know. So that kind of thing isn't right either.
I really
It's
think
such a
that
tangled
there is
mess right
this
now.
way that I feel of just especially as I get older, because I did not feel this way at all when I was younger. But now I'm just like, the people who actually do stuff and work hard should not have to pay for you lazy people to do nothing. That's how I feel.
Yeah. And I think it's like it has so much to do with us losing the social fabric. Like you used to be able to be like I know right now that if I would never be homeless. I have a
Correct.
community of my family and I have friends, they would not let me be homeless. But there's people out there who some reason or another are like the government needs to be my social fabric and I
Yeah.
need them to get by and I need them. And there's obviously you have to go
Didn't the
situation by
church used to
situation.
feel
Yes,
right? The
totally,
church would fill
totally.
that role.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't have
It's
that anymore.
no, like the social fabric is disappearing and you know, and also being at home on your computer all the time, not participating in community, that doesn't help because the more you participate in community, even when I was in the yoga world, I don't think those people would let me go homeless. Like my friends would be like, I will help you if you're in a terrible situation. I will,
Yeah.
but people don't get that because they're not out being in a community.
I've also
Yeah.
heard people say the kind of thing with like universal health care where it's like I shouldn't have to pay, like if there's people who sit at home all day just like gaining tons of weight and eating Oreos, like it's like I shouldn't have to pay for you to do that if you're not gonna like for your health problems that come as a result of that.
So let me tell you. So I'm a paramedic and a nurse and going to people's. Okay.
Are you still
So
doing
when people,
911 calls, by the way? Now that you're a
no,
mom?
no, I'm home with my son
Okay.
right now because we're moving. We were only in Wisconsin for 1 year, but
Okay.
so I'm just with my son. But when people were saying like, "Oh, we shouldn't, unvaccinated people should have to
Right.
go to the end of the line at the emergency room because they made the choice," I'm like, you do not want to go down that road because half of America, their whole life would change if they lost like 60 pounds. And everyone's got this heart disease. People smoke, people have all these things they have done to themselves. So I don't think you want to go down the road of personal choices being the hierarchy of, or the, the way to triage people in healthcare.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, I hope people don't take too much offense to that. It's just my
I
husband.
was just
Yeah.
reading an article the other
Yeah.
day. Someone was writing about what it was like to be unvaccinated during that time, and he copied and pasted a bunch of like social media posts that were like, unvaccinated people should die. They should go in camps. I don't care if they are last in line. You shouldn't get to hospital bed if you're unvaccinated. And I was like, I remember what it was like. People don't talk about that anymore, and they want to just brush over it like it didn't happen. And I'm like, I remember it. I remember all of you people saying all those things, and I remember reading them and what it felt like.
My gosh, this is going to be so hard to explain to our children in the future, like what that time was like.
Yeah,
Like it was awful. It was super awful. And just everything going on in the world with the George Floyd stuff at the same time, it was like,
crazy.
it
George
was
Floyd, now
crazy.
I saw was like on drugs, and that was why he
He
died.
was. He was. Yes.
Well,
There's
I
a lot of
felt a little ripped off when I saw that because I was very up in arms. I was super woke still when that happened. That was like the end of my woke phase.
that was when I knew I was done with Seattle because where I was working at the time, the fire department, like they called us up as part of a strike team, which is like a extra like backup from other cities because they can't, use a whole fire department from one city or you wouldn't have anybody else. But there's these huge riots in Seattle. And I just remember seeing everybody destroying the city, and it's just such a beautiful city. And people were bashing in the whole downtown and going after cops, and it was just awful. It was just horrible. And like, I know that police officers, firefighters, all first responders are in it because they care about the community because you don't make that much money. So like
Yeah.
that you have to be. And it just was like, wow, wow, it was awful. It was awful to see. And when I went to Florida, it was such a breath of fresh air to um be in a place where there's a lot of different people who feel a lot of different ways and they can all coexist. Like imagine that.
Did you see that thing going around when the fires were so intense in California where it was like
Ah,
the California. Oh, did you freeze?
trying to reconnect.
Are you back?
Let's see.
Okay.
I am back. Yeah, do your clap clap. I don't know what happened.
What were we saying? Oh, I know what I was
In
gonna ask.
Florida. Yeah.
I was gonna ask
Mm-hmm.
you, um, when you were working as a responder, first responder,
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, like, what kinds of people you met, like, that also work in that field. What are they like?
Oh, people in who are first responders they're just my people. I love them. They're you know, smart. They like excitement. We all like adrenaline. We all like to be boots on the ground when shit is going wrong. We're like the people who run in instead of run away. I love that. Um, and people who uh, there's a really dark sense of humor that goes along with it. There's a big community, especially if you work 24-hour shifts. It's definitely like a family. Um, it's it's a really fun it's a really fun place to work. That's all I can say. It's just like there's definitely like a brotherhood and a sisterhood. Um, it's definitely a more conservative group, which is another thing that like sort of reinforced that for me because there's it'll turn you that way pretty quick.
Seeing the things that you
So
see.
yes, yeah, yeah. It people can get a little jaded, people can get a little cynical. That's we call it like an old salty medic, just seeing a lot, seeing people destroy their bodies, and then you have to help them over and over. In Washington, there's a lot of drugs. You're narcanning the same people over and over again.
Right.
So you have to maintain an attitude of like every time Narcan this person, save them. I'm hoping they take the opportunity to change their life. You have to keep that, or you'll just, that mindset, or you'll just
Yeah,
be,
I feel like there you must
discouraged.
be a lot of very dark things, and so I imagine that there must be a way that the group deals with that or like respond, like you learn to handle those things.
Well, certainly there's, you know, community just, being with your crew is amazing, but there is a high prevalence of depression and suicide. And I think it's getting better because they're realizing like you can't see a child die and then just like go on the next call. Like
Yeah.
you can't do that to your crews. You have
Yeah.
to you have to take some action to take care of your people. They're definitely implementing that a lot more, but in the past I think it was really bad. And um for me though, and for a lot of people I know, it's just talking with your crew. Got to make sure your crew stays away from substances, from alcohol, from coping in bad ways. Look out for each other. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm very grateful for people like you because I know
Oh,
I
thanks.
think
Hmm.
sometimes about like that saved my brother's life, you know? They like there was some group of
Absolutely.
people in Pennsylvania that responded to the car accident and like got him to the
Absolutely.
hospital. And I think
And a
about
lot
that
of those,
sometimes, like what that
hmm
must have been like for them, what they saw, and it's not a good thing for
yeah.
me to think about, but I do ever think about it.
Yeah. And a lot of those people are volunteers, which is another amazing thing about most of America. They're volunteering because they want to help their community, and which is amazing. But uh, yeah, it is interesting to think about. I've had over the years a couple of people write me a letter or contact me, and a lot of times I'm like, oh, I don't remember that. But sometimes I'm like, oh wow, I forgot about that, or I never got an outcome. I never knew what happened to that person, or oh, I'm glad to hear that that worked out. And it's it's more it's probably more poor outcomes than wins because it's an emergency.
Yeah.
It's like if you are in a traumatic situation, or if you're having a heart attack, it's like you're already in a bad spot, and we do our very best, but you're already, we're starting from behind. So it is good to get that. It's good to get that
I
follow up.
never
Always
thought
love
about that.
that.
Yeah, that's one of those
Yeah,
jobs where you
yeah.
don't get to know what happens, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Not always. Sometimes some agencies have a way of like you can contact someone and kind of follow up a little bit, but most patients, no, most patients you'll see like when you drop them off at the hospital, you're like they were alive when I dropped them off.
Yeah.
So I did my part in the chain, but long-term outcomes are harder to get a hold of.
I think about my dad's girlfriend, I believe, used to have a job where I don't know if I'll get it wrong because it was like he told me, I didn't hear it directly from her, but she was working with children who had been like suspected of being abused. And so she was kind of the person who would go in and make the decision like, should this child stay with their parents or not?
Oh
And
my
part
gosh.
of that job was like she didn't get to find out what happened, because sometimes the child, like she would
That
decide the child stays with the family and then the child dies, and it's like you're not allowed to know the outcome so that it doesn't affect you, but you still like you're
Oh
living in
my
this space of
God.
making these decisions and not knowing.
So awful. Wow.
Yeah.
That's tough. Yeah, that's really tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
With us, it's like a lot of times I have a good idea of like, ooh, that one's, I don't know if that's going to turn out. I don't know if
Yeah.
he's going to, live a couple hours or a couple days. And there's some people who are like, I think we got a shot with this one, you
Yeah.
know, but,
Yeah. Wow. Well,
hmm
is there anything else you want to touch on that we didn't get to touch on?
Um, no,
Or
I
anything
wish
you
we'd
want
gotten
to
to more of
say?
your stories about things because I know I just I go off, I ramble. So I wish we'd gotten more of your stories and stuff about your experience, but I
Oh
know
no, you're good.
you
We have
probably
my podcast. There's plenty of opportunity for me to
true,
somehow. Someone
true.
actually is coming on. We're gonna do like a reverse interview. I think she's gonna interview me, so it'll be
Ooh,
fun. We'll see where that goes,
nice.
but
Nice. I don't know what you're gonna name this episode. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what you're gonna name this one.
I
Yeah,
do struggle because the talk conversations tend to go
yeah,
so many different places that I try to put like
yeah.
some of the main topics in the
Mm-hmm.
title. But I do
Yeah,
it is a bit
yeah,
of a struggle.
yeah,
But anyway,
yeah.
thank you so much for coming on.
Of
I'm sure
course. Yeah,
everybody
it's
will
good to talk
love
to
to hear
you.
your story.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It was fun.